They knew you were coming.
Our next item is approval of the agenda. Rob, any changes proposed? Anybody have anything they'd like to add or amend to today's agenda? Now would be the time.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 3 is public comment. This is an opportunity for somebody to speak to the board about something that's not on today's agenda. Anybody wishing to do so today? Come on up. No one? And we can continue on to item 4, which is the consent items. We have A, B, and C today. In Manitou, if somebody wishes to pull one for particular consideration, now would be the time. And if nobody is so inclined, then a motion concerning the consent items would be in order.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So we can move on right into item 5, reports, and we begin with the Executive Director's report. Do you want to?
Yeah, I did want to highlight a few things, but for those at the table, you already see the PPACG annual report for 2013. A little bit of a record of everything that we all did last year. Even though it's March, we've got it compiled, and it's for your reading pleasure. For those in the audience, you have to look online probably or see if there's some extras floating around. But, we have some extra copies if board members want them to take back. Hand them out to whomever you would like to tell about PPACG.
Rob, I know we'll take some at the county, but can you also get me a little stack I'll take to a neighborhood meeting tonight?
Sure. Jason may have a stack nearby.
A few.
Not that we want to get rid of them, but now
Well, we want people to see them. Is it online as well?
I don't believe yet it's now active online.
Well, I think that's great, because I know one of the things we've discussed here is how we don't often get our work out into the public and let people know exactly what we're doing here on the Council of Government. So it's a good starting point, I think, to get this out in circulation.
Have a look and always take feedback on it. We get any reports from a lot of our fellow agencies around the country, and the one from Atlanta looks a lot like this, except not the planes. So that's the first thing I wanted to highlight. A couple other things in the package. You have my full executive director's report. Just highlight a few things. Bev introduced herself. She and I and others have been working with the auditors. Our independent auditors are working on their write-up of the activities, the financial activities of PPACG. I believe they're coming next month to the board. Bev is nodding yes, so I will report to you what they found, if anything. Also highlight the area chiefs of staff. Some of our military folks are back with us, and I meet with them usually once a month. They have a lunch meeting, and we go over all sorts of issues. I think one of the big issues last time was transportation. They're all reminded we're in the midst of our transportation planning effort. So if there are any transportation needs, on post, off post, between the different installations, they're going to let us know. And they have folks that sit on our committees. So I think we'll be hearing that through that process. Also hosted, there's a new director of the Southwest Colorado COG. They wanted to talk about how to integrate, as we have, our area agency on aging into a council of governments. So kind of a best practice. Right now they're two separate organizations, but they're looking to see the efficiencies of bringing two organizations together, as we've done for probably 40 years now. Under transportation, I think I'll talk a lot more about all the efforts to look for funding for the key projects in the region. TIP Amendment 13 and 14 are going to cover the details of that. Also want to bring your attention to the something called chocolate software. Under the Area Agency on Aging, we have new software that we're implementing so we can look at, as the vendors, as the subcontractors deliver services for our Area Agency on Aging. It's a software
It sounds really appealing too.
It does.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, chocolate's so good we heisted it.
Is it dark chocolates? That's good for
Dr. Cogg's, they formulated that chocolate mixture. We borrowed it, and on the inbound, we're going to know what our contractors are going to deliver for us, and it's going to help us track things electronically so there's less interpretation in area agency and aging services that are done. But I sat through the training, so I'm now dangerous with chocolate, I suppose. And I will share if I get some. And then finally, with our admin hat of Pikes Peak RTA, we met with the folks from City of Colorado Springs, the budget directors over there. They haven't really gotten into the details of the Pikes Peak RTA, so we hosted a couple-hour meeting with them to explain how the PPRTA works, and of course, PPACG is the admin contractor. So, the rest of the board would know a little bit about that. So that's all I'll highlight. Happy to answer any questions.
When did you want us to talk about the strategic?
Maybe under member
We-
announcements.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
That's all I got.
Any questions for Rob? I'd like to welcome Councilman Joel Miller from Colorado Springs, and we can go ahead and call up our Transportation Advisory Committee report summary, and I see Tom is already working his way to the podium, so.
Had to find it first.
Yeah, I know.
It's always in a different spot. At our last meeting, we did approve TIP Amendment 13, which was adding $4.17 million to the I-25 widening project from Woodman up to Monument. And TIP Amendment 14 was recommended. We needed some clarification from PPACG staff. We received some later, about a week after the meeting. I think Craig is going to talk a little bit more about that today, but it was approved by the TAC. And then the 2040 Regional Transportation Plan, the draft objectives and evaluation criteria. We did make a few changes to evaluation criteria 1, 2, 10, and 12, minor wording changes just to make things a little clearer, and you'll probably get to see those. That's about it. We were a little concerned about TIP Amendment 14, but I think we're going to get some clarification today from Craig. So that's it. Any questions?
Any questions? No? Well, thank you, Tom. Seamlessly transfer over to Commissioner Heisey here.
Thank you. Community Advisory Committee report. Mr. Baker.
Morning. I will be very brief. We reviewed and recommend both TIP Amendment 13 and 14. We have looked to engage in a workshop. We've had a significant veteran turnover on the CAC, and before we get deep into the 2040 plan, we're going to stage a workshop so that everybody is kind of on the same page. We also discussed a citizens at-large vacancy application, and it was sent to the nominating committee. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Regional Advisory Council. Mr. Campbell.
Good morning. We met our monthly meeting on February 27th. We received presentations from Tulare County and Park County, and we discussed receiving the presentations from our providers throughout the year and the effectiveness of that. So we decided to continue that. We thought that was the best way to do it instead of doing it all in one day as we had done in previous years. So each month as we meet, we will have a presentation by one of our providers. As I said, this past time we received presentation from Tulare and Park County. Did you know that there's one person every 8 square miles in Park County? It's pretty spread out.
Lonely.
I'm sure Mark did, right?
It's pretty spread out. The Older Americans Act is due for reauthorization, and we're hoping that it goes through smoothly. As a result of sequestration, there's a hold harmless provision that was instituted, and which means that we will receive, unless something changes, 18% less money in Colorado than we received prior to that. So there's action being taken by lobbyists and others to try to get that provision removed. Our lobbyist has also been successful in getting $4.5 million additional funds for Colorado, which means out of that we'll get $440,000. And after Rob and I and Guy take our cut, we'll meet to decide how to do the rest of the $50,000. I am working with Silver Key with the Veterans Transportation Community Living Initiative. I'm sure you know about that. as they were one of the grantees, and so I'll be working with Pat Ellis and her organization to support that. And as Rob said, it's now getting time for the RFP season, and as our providers come in with their requests, we'll be looking at those using the dark chocolate software. It'll help us evaluate those RFPs as they come in. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions? Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mobility, the coordinating committee. Ms. McGowan?
Hello, this is Gail Nels with the
Okay.
MCC, but Michelle was heading that committee. I was out of town, so I really don't have anything to add. I'll tell you what you received in your packet if you have questions. There is someone in the audience, Brian Vituli, that might be able to answer some questions about the new funding process for replacement buses and operating capital for transportation. Anything?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Arkansas Fountain Coalition for Urban.
Still the longest acronym of any committee here. The group discussed the sampling template that the districts will have to use to go ahead and give their data to the state. Also talked about some unresolved issues with regards to the data and how the data will be reviewed by each of the agencies. The next agenda item was dues and funding for 2014. This has been finalized. The breakdown for each district was included in the minutes. The bulk of the meeting was spent on the AFCURE next steps. It's a white paper that goes into the issues and the concerns with regards to water quality. This paper will be presented to the board as a informational item next month, so I will not go into details regarding that right now. With that, any questions?
Questions for Rich? Thank you.
Thanks.
With the board's permission, I would like to move to our information items. We have quite a few people in the audience for items A and B, and I anticipate our action items will have significant discussion. So, seeing any real dissension there, let's go to item 7A.
Making sure that was me.
That'd be Kate.
See, now I'm not at all prepared, but I think I'll be close.
She knows how to be flexible. We changed
Hey,
it.
did you want to? Oh, I pulled up the.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you this morning. My name is Ed Anderson. I'm the president of the National Homeland Defense Foundation. You're probably wondering what that has to do with the Peak Military Care Network. We provide operational and governance oversight of PMCN, and you all, the PPACG, through Rob, provides the fiduciary oversight for PMCN, as you know. I just wanted to make a couple of quick points before Kate gets into the details of the presentation. Number one is that this effort that has been underway now for several years is about to come to fruition, and we are about to see the benefit that it is going to provide, and early indications are that it's going to be significant. What I would offer to you, as you know, the intent here is to help service members, veterans, and their family members, and I think we all know that the number of veterans and certainly family members associated with those veterans is going to increase over the next several years by virtue of sequestration and budget reductions and so on and so forth. My point is that the need is going to increase for this kind of activity. What you are going to see and what I would offer to you for consideration is the fact that this is a tool for the community to be able to address the needs of veterans and their family members in this community. It's a win-win. It helps the veterans, it helps the community, because you are helping make these people better contributors to the community that they live in, our community, your community. The other point I would make that's a little bit more subtle, but nonetheless I think may ultimately be a little more significant, is that shortly you're going to hear a presentation from Steve Dent and the MAC about efforts regarding BRAC. And this kind of activity will help tell the story of how good Colorado is to the military. This is a good news story, and we'll reinforce that point, and that will be very important as we are going to be in competition with 49 other states for the resources that are going to be associated with BRAC and the reductions and hopefully the increases, the expansion, which is something that we'd like to address as a part of that all as well. So with that as introduction, let me turn it over to Kate Hatton, who really, she is the brains and the energy behind this effort, let me tell you, and she'll give you the details. Thank you.
Actually, I'm not sure I need to say anything else. Thanks, Ed. Just to kind of give you a little background of how this is all intertwined together, where we've been and where we're going, just wanted to take a few minutes to do that because I think it's been a while since we've been here and had that conversation. So most of you probably remember the Fort Carson Regional Growth Plan that really started in late 2006 that PPACG took on to really look at, to break it down simply, infrastructure and people. Who's coming? When are they coming? Where are the roads going? Are there big enough roads? Is the housing in the right place? Do we have enough schools and the types of schools? And then really the pieces that I think that weren't really accounted for so much initially as so much work was done to address the infrastructure and the interchanges and the changes in transportation, that really what happened with the families that came and the years of war and the challenges, and then transitioning veterans and all of the things that happened with all of those components. So that became a greater need than I think that we originally anticipated, but again looked at 12 different issue areas again across the spectrum of transportation, housing, education, utilities, and health and human services, behavioral health, medical care, really tried to be very, very broad-based. And at the same time, and PPACG participated as well, there were efforts looking at kind of specifically around behavioral health. There was the Military Community Collaborative and the Strategic Resources Initiative. Really, how does the community do a better job of collaborating, and how does that tie into everything that was going on with the growth plan? And actually, some of those efforts folded into the growth plan to do a couple of things. One of the recommendations that came out of the plan was to have a centralized web-based resource. A lot of resources in this community, and it not only did not other nonprofits know what others were doing, it was how do we access information on the military installations, what's the VA doing, and so the Network of Care website, excuse me, really helped kind of centralize that information and provided a lot of other features and resources for our military and veteran community. Also through PPACG and the growth plan, we did the strategic planning for what has become the Peak Military Care Network, a very broad assessment across all the sectors that we've talked about, interviewed veterans, family members of service members, military leadership, community leadership, schools, early care and education providers, housing communities, apartment managers, and everybody who could touch the military and did touch the military in any way. We tried to find out what the community was doing well, what we could be doing better, and how do we do a better job of coordinating. So out of that came really the need to, again, a centralized leadership structure that touched all of the different sectors, military, VA, community, business, and really start talking at a very high level about how do we coordinate and how do we institutionalize that coordination. So that was kind of, again, where it really wasn't just about, and this is, I think, what makes us unique from other communities, it wasn't just about wounded warriors. It wasn't just about veterans. It was about service members, veterans, and family, whether it was active duty, Guard, Reserve, and whatever sort of status somebody got out of, whether they were a retiree after 20 years or someone who spent 4 years in, and is now a member of our community, and how do we do a good job of supporting it? How do we align with what the military can and can't do, what the VA can and can't do, and what the community needs to do to step up? So, and through that process, we were able to obtain the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation funding that goes through October of this year that really helped us do what we would call startup, kind of getting to building the infrastructure, building the resources, and part of that process was the pilot program, where we formalized collaborations by having partner agencies sign an MOU that outlined responsibilities and benefits to really around making sure that community-based providers really were focused and intent on understanding and supporting military and veteran culture and working together and collaborating. So those were really kind of the key foundations of what we were trying to do. And then really, what are the systems and process? Collaboration is sometimes messy and complicated, particularly when you have 16 partner agencies, and again, cross-district, trying to learn different languages. My husband was Air Force, so I thought I knew Air Force, and I thought I knew military. Then I had to learn Armyese. Then I had to learn all the different acronyms, and there's local government acronyms and state. And so trying to learn it all and have everybody speaking the same language is a big piece of it, and getting people to talk about. And also the other piece of that is having them come in, if they come in for one service provider seeking one resource, whether that's financial assistance or, hey, I'm new to town and where do I find housing or where are the schools that I want to go to, and really you find out there are a series of things that make sure there's that warm handoff to connect folks. So, and through that process, the governance and the advisory board structure has transitioned under partnership with PPACG to the National Homeland Defense Foundation, as Ed mentioned. So going back to the strategic planning, where we came from and kind of what came out of that was really the focus was on connecting folks to connecting need to resource and quality resources with people who understood, again, military veteran culture and collaboration. And making sure that we were working and sharing information with the military installations, with the VA, and each other, so that everybody could kind of be on the same page. And really, it's overall about health and well-being for service members, veterans, family members, and the communities in which they live, which is all of our communities. Again, the focus is very broad-based in terms of looking at all the military and veteran community and family members. And again, not just one particular issue, and realizing that there's so much interconnectedness between all of those issues, whether it's someone going back to school and needing some help with child care or behavioral health, or again, trying to connect it to a service member who moves in and a spouse needs employment. So trying to address all of the kind of many internet-connected issues. So what does the Peak Military Care Network really do? It's really that community force multiplier, if you will, to put it in a military term. That central source for trusted information, having that advisory board and the leadership structure where all of those folks can talk and raise big picture issues, whether it's how is that United Healthcare TRICARE transition going, or how are we addressing sort of the community issues about, what's going to happen as things change, as there are a lot of changes in DoD funding and different things, and how is the community going to step up. And then the Network of Care website, as I mentioned earlier, very good web-based resource with a lot of features. And that's great for people who are good self-advocators, who can look, who are, looking at in another community and looking to move here. They can look at stuff somewhere else. They can keep all that information there. Because I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people who come here, they leave, and they're coming back. Because this is a good place to be. And then we're now, as through the pilot process, realized that we need to be able to do additional assistance for those who either don't know how to access services, don't know that they have access to services, or really need more assistance. So we are working in partnership with Pikes Peak United Way and 211 to have a call center set up. We're very close. We're working out some, we're in the nitty-gritty details of databases and procedures and things to make that work, so that'll be launched very soon, and you'll hear more about that. But really, so people can call in and get really not just a phone number, here, good luck, but really some triage around really what are you asking for, what is the need. Okay, we see that you've called 4 times in the past 4 months for the same thing. Maybe there's a bigger picture issue. And also work with folks who can provide more navigation assistance. A lot of, especially small nonprofits, don't necessarily have that ability to stay with somebody for 90 days or a longer term, and be able to do a series of follow-ups to make sure that not just, we gave you some resources, but to do that follow-up. Was that helpful? Okay, and if not, how do we connect you to something else that's helpful? And if it was, great. And so, or is there anything else that we can help with? And then the partner agencies, another, it's a very multi-legged stool. The partner agencies, and there are currently 18, I'll show those in a couple minutes, really work together and they talk together, they meet in this room once a month, to kind of, again, raise issues, what's going on, did something come up that they didn't know how to handle, and they could ask somebody else or get, input on how else it might help. But also, they get training. Again, on military veteran culture issues, on things like crisis management, or what are the resources for newly transitioned veterans for employment in the community, for education, and how do we connect them with people who really understand what the GI Bill is about so that they can use those benefits the way they should be used and not get sidetracked, shall we say. So out of all those, we currently have 18 partner agencies. That number is growing, and that's what we're working to do. And all of those partner agencies together with us reach more than 22,000 service members and veterans and families in this community already. Navigation assistance, as I mentioned, that sort of longer-term follow-up and warm handoff. And then integrated services are where we're headed to be more holistic and really wrap around those service members, veterans, and families. I always have one slide that nobody can read. I can't even read it from here. But just so you know, there are 21. Rob might be able to read it all. No, not intending to read it all, but really, again, to show you the advisory board and the breadth of the leadership on that advisory board that includes the military installations, the VA, community leaders, some of whom are in the audience, and I was remiss in not mentioning Wes Clark, who is also here, who is the chair of our advisory board, who brings a lot of wealth and passion to this issue as well. These are our partner agencies, again, everything from transportation and behavioral health to family supports, mental health, I mentioned already, again, broad-based workforce center, education. So really, again, trying to be very broad-based and connect the dots as best as we can and to kind of build up what resources we need to be able to do to support our military and veteran community. So really, what is the value to the region? That coordination leverages a lot of resources. If we get people into resources and services before they're in crisis, that certainly saves their frustration and their hassle and their giving up. And it connects them proactively to care and resources so that it's more effective. It also saves money, keeping people out of emergency rooms and long-term care where they can get more proactive and preventive resources, or keeping them before somebody comes homeless, or getting them a job as they transition out so that there is not that sort of crisis. That helps save millions of dollars annually. And again, the economic benefits of, on a variety of levels, having the partnerships have brought in more than $3 million in funding to this region through our partners to help service members, veterans, and families. And again, you have productive members of society. They are transitioning service members are employed here, and they contribute to the community. They contribute taxes, and again, they're it's a very productive arrangement. And then really, it raises awareness, as Ed touched on this too, is that the Peak Military Care Network and what we've done in terms of collaboration and bringing people together is seen as a best practice and a model statewide and nationally. So we get asked on a regular basis, what are you doing, what's been working, what lessons have you learned, so that we can kind of work to export this and make sure that other communities can do this as well too. But from the National League of Cities and the Association of Defense Communities to the state efforts, really the people are looking to what we've done and can they replicate it for what makes sense in their community. Every community is going to be a little different, but we're trying to figure some of those out and help share, again, whatever we've learned, and also steal as many ideas as we can from other people. And then, again, that record of community support is something that I think will be looked to at BRAC and other DOD restructuring issues. Is this a community that's supportive? We hear that all the time, and I think we're showing it. And so those are, I think, some of the key value points for PMCN. What are we doing now? We've gone through the pilot. We've worked out a lot of the mechanisms, what the MOUs look like, some of those partnerships and structured formalized collaboration. So we want to expand those partner agencies and make sure that we are carefully identifying, where are the gaps, where do we need to, and are those people committed to supporting military and veteran culture, and understanding and reaching out and working with others to be able to make sure that the community and that person is made whole. And then that call-in assistance, as we talked about, and more formalized navigation support with our navigation partners. And then trainings. Again, trainings for community. Again, one of the concerns is that, the wars are winding down. What's the problem? Things are over. But things are not over for a lot of families. Some of these issues are long-term and multi-generational. And again, as Ed mentioned, as more people get out, they're going to need jobs. And there's a complete culture change when you go out of the military into the community and you become a civilian again. And there's a lot to deal with. That's a big life change. And so how can we help support that? And make sure that the community knows, and I think this is a good community, it's at least a quarter of the population is military connected, so I think this community gets it more than a lot of others, but really trying to make sure that message remains and stays, that this is an important part that we're going to work with for a long time and support for a long time. Information sharing, continuing to do that and work with partner agencies and share information and outreach more. So you'll hear more about us, not just in these meetings, but hopefully on a more public level so that people know. So really we want to make sure that the service members, veterans, and family members themselves know how to access those resources. And then, again, continuing to engagement in military members change on a regular basis, so we want to make sure we keep engaged and keep everybody informed and learn and hear from as things change. There's a lot of change going on. What can we continue to do as a community to support? And then, again, trying to measure outcomes, not just how many do we serve, but is it working? Are we moving the needle on veteran suicide? Are we addressing some of these issues? What's the employment rate looking like, and where are we making a mark, and where do we need to improve? And then, as Ed touched on as well, too, securing sustainable funding sources over the long term. We've gotten a lot of funding through planning and startup, and we really need to look at sustainable funding and all working together as a community to kind of address what the long-term goal is and how do we continue to work together. So that collaboration is, like I said, complicated and does require some resources. And so that's really what I wanted to fill you in on and just really open it up to you all in terms of PPACG's ongoing role, particularly after 2014 or October, and what we can provide for you, how you continue to be engaged, and where do we go from here. So open to any questions, and I'm going to share the questions with the generals here who.
Mr. Steen.
Kate, thanks for everything you're doing. This is an amazing effort, and it's really good to see. It's really soaring. A couple of questions. How would you characterize the demographic of who is being served? Is there a description of who is the most likely user? Military, a family member, provider?
It's really across the board, and it depends on the various service providers. We'll be able to build more of that through the call center. We don't have a lot of data on that yet, and we'll get more of that. It's more veterans than active duty folks who have a lot of resources on the military installations, particularly young veterans who think they may not have access to resources, but it really is very broad-based.
Is there, say, top three or several that, primary issues that you find more hits on?
Primary issues are always around workforce, finding jobs, trying to understand education.
So transition, military.
Transitioning issues are certainly big, and a lot of it is just information. Again, not knowing. Fort Carson has done a lot in terms of transition university, but it's still a lot to take in. And depending on how motivated that person is who's soon to be a veteran to receive all that information, or if they think they're going to go to school and it doesn't work out and they haven't thought about what kind of job they're going to get, or they didn't think through what their long-term health benefits should be or for their families, those are some of the issues. And again, it's usually more complex than just, hey, I'm looking for a job. I'm looking for a job, and oh, by the way, my girlfriend's pregnant, and we don't have health insurance, and so those are kind of some of the key issues. Yeah. Transportation for those who don't have it is always an issue as well.
Mayor.
Kate, it's good to have you back.
Thank you.
It's been a while, and it's good to see you at 9:30 instead of your usual 11:30
Yeah, I
slot.
appreciate that. Thank you.
When everybody's thinking about lunch and their afternoon plans. So, and this is fabulous. This is really impressive. Having watched this generate from the beginning to where we are now, and I understand the mission for veterans and active military and their families. But I also read a headline today where Peterson, I guess, is laying off 200 civilian employees. I'm just wondering, is there any application for that type of situation? And maybe it's a better question for Mr. Dant, but I'm always thinking, with the BRAC looming and the military downsizing, we really need to be strategic in things we can do to show our support for the military and I think enhance our chances of keeping all of our installations healthy.
Absolutely, that's a part of the equation, and I know that the military installations did a lot even during sequester when there were furloughs and worked with a lot of us in the community to figure out what supports were needed, were there going to be issues about financial gaps, were people, making a paycheck to paycheck, and what did they need. So we look at that and also, work with the military installations to make sure that we're connecting those dots, absolutely.
Good, well, thank you.
Many of them also are either spouses or veterans too, so.
Yeah, I feel there may be some overlap there, and
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity maybe for us or some other civilian organization to kind of step into that breach, because I'm anticipating that's probably the beginning
Yes.
of some reductions on bases and stuff. So.
And one of the good advantages that many of the partner agencies work not just exclusively with military or veterans, so they work community-wide, and having those conversations and those collaborations just helps foster broader collaborations across the community. And having good information and good data that PPACG provides in terms of what those numbers are, what are they going to look like, when are those cuts going to take place, it's always good information.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Anything else for Kate? Yes.
Thank you very much for your report. It seems like the effort to ramp up how do we at least get our message out for potential BRAC in the future as a community, that's starting to ramp up. And to the extent that PPACG can really probably be a focal point for that versus the city or the county, all of us working together just to find out what it is that we can do. I mean, a lot of these things, as the past has indicated, come down to, who has the most seniority on the Armed Services Committee or of the Senate or the House. And I hate to say that, but that's the reality. But when there's a tiebreaker, if there is something like this or a way that a community can show how well they've embraced the military and how well they've supported them, I think it's really important. So I would encourage you to connect with the RBA. I know the Business Alliance, I know, is working on that effort, and I think it would really be great to connect the dots on this.
I think General Anderson wears many hats and may be able to address that.
Hi, Joel. We totally agree with you, first of all. I mean, that's almost a no-brainer, just as you suggest. Another organization under the National Homeland Defense Foundation is the Colorado National Defense Support Council. I chair that. We work very closely with Steve and the MAC. We work with Jay Lindell up in the state. All pulling together, trying to get ourselves better postured to be able to address what is coming. So that's an effort that's going to take some time and some resources, and it is being done.
Great. I guess I'd just like to, I don't know what the board position is, but anything that this board can do, or our individual governments, to sort of unify the effort and make sure that we're all sort of
Absolutely.
go in the same direction, I would certainly be willing to step up for that.
And we will come to you, I can assure you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Anything else?
Me? You just keep forgetting your fellow commissioner down here. Either for Kate or General Anderson, I just was wondering what your interconnection is with our county Veteran Services Office. You know, the commissioners commit, over $250,000 a year out of our general fund budget to provide a mandate by the state that we provide Veteran Services Office with very little support. But what's your interconnection with, first, our Veteran Services Office, and then secondly, the Pikes Peak Workforce Center?
Pikes Peak, good question. The Pikes Peak Workforce Center is currently a partner agency, and we work directly with them, again, through partnership meetings and, again, connections and referrals. They get information on if somebody comes in looking for a job, but has other needs, they know where to connect them. And building that relationship, too, with Jim Tackett and the Veteran Service Office. In fact, Jim just briefed our partner agencies last week. I'm hoping they're going to sign the MOU, too, to become a partner agency. But they're the kind of the go-to referrals for when someone needs benefit assistance.
I think
So
Commissioner Heising and I might be able to work on that.
I just gave it to Jim, so it's no pressure. It's not really.
And Mr. Chairman, you gave some figures yesterday. Do you still have those of how many we served through the Veteran Services Office just in a month, right? It was just 1 month.
Something along the...
It was over 7,000.
7,000 phone calls, over 750 correspondence going back and forth, 300 or 400 walk-in.
Right. So it's an important place. And, sometimes, God bless the agencies that work with our veterans, but, sometimes they need somebody who's kind of outside of the VA to work as an ombudsman, because they can really, the paperwork is just a nightmare. And I think we started tracking them better to where, are you not just a veteran, but have you had military service? Because sometimes those who have had military service don't always consider themselves veterans. It's an interesting way to go.
And then, when women don't self-identify as veterans, even more so than males. And so, absolutely. And again, one of the counseling of all of the partner agencies is really, don't have somebody do that, fill out that paperwork on their own. Go to the Veteran Service Office and make sure that you do it right the first time, because having to go through an appeal is even more complicated and takes a lot longer. So we want them to use the experts. So. I know that he doesn't need any more business over there, but that's what
it's there for, is to act as that sort of ombudsman assistance outside of the VA.
And also related that to making sure that people do register with the VA for health care, because the number of registrants is what drives federal funding for this community. So the more we can get people, I'm fine. I serve my time, but there may be something that comes up later. But always to be able, and they may not know that they have access to health care if they're an Iraq or Afghan combat veteran. So they can actually, so that they need to do that. So that's all. Absolutely want to make sure we make those connections.
Thanks, Kate, and thank you, General Anderson, and everyone who's working on this, because it's a really important part for all of our community.
And let me know if you need more brochures. I've got more in my car. Thank you.
Else? Thank you, Kate. Appreciate it. Moving on to the Colorado Springs Regional Business Alliance Military Affairs Council, MACT. Steve Dan?
Where is the button to go forward? Just this one right here. Okay, got it. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm Steve Dant. I'm this year's chair of the Military Affairs Council, part of the Regional Business Alliance. Full disclosure, I'm also president of Fox 21. Wasn't sure I was going to be here this morning as we were in live coverage watching that chase in Denver of that carjacker who, and I don't know if you know the story, but when a woman went into a convenience store, she left her 4-year-old child in the back of the car for a few moments, and he stole the car and took off. High-speed chase for over an hour this morning. He hijacked 2 other vehicles. He was going the wrong direction on 470 and I-70, and they finally caught him and captured him about an hour ago. So very compelling television and an exciting morning in our news operation as we linked in with Fox 31 up in Denver. It's an interesting year to be chair of the Military Affairs Council. When Secretary of Defense stands up and says that we're going to be seeing some major cuts, that's obviously could possibly impact our community here. I thought I'd give you a little background on the Military Affairs Council. It's an organization that's been around since the 1940s. The core values have always been service, support, and advocacy. Our vision has been to be the preferred advisor of our military, political, civic, and business leaders on issues that intersect the military and/or defense industry. And our mission is to build on a rich tradition of strong support to our military and the community. We strive to be the first organization that any military command in the Pikes Peak region looks for service, and we serve as the voice of the military and the defense and related industries in the Pikes Peak region. We do this in a number of areas, and again, as I mentioned, we've been doing this for a long time. Not me personally, but this organization's been in existence since the 1940s, back when Fort Carson was Camp Carson. It's been through more than a couple of BRACs. Our Military Defense Council has been heavily involved with previous BRACs or reorganizations of various military installations through the years. So we've got some experience in doing this. And our council, headed up by Larry Fortner, has been working very closely with Ed's organization, and you'll hear a little more about that in a moment. We interrelate or interface between the military, government, defense-related, and the community. And we do that through a number of ways. We hold general membership meetings. We have ACOS meetings, area commanders luncheons. We got one of those coming up later this morning, 11:30, out at Peterson. Through news and notes, through our website, which has been refurbished and reorganized over the last year, through our holiday receptions, through hails and farewells. We have a hail and farewell coming up next Tuesday at 4:30, and we'd invite all of you to attend. Through annual awards, through senior enlisted breakfast, through our liaison program, and through our Defense Mission Task Force. I don't have to tell you how big the economic impact here for the state is, and particularly with regard to our community. It's about $6.5 billion. Huge. Fort Carson is most of that, or the biggest part of that, I should say, at $2.2 billion. You can see where the Air Force Academy is. Schriever is about $1.2 billion. The Peterson Complex is about $1.5 billion. Buckley is about $1 billion. So it's a big industry. It's a big component for our state. And the moment, and I get the sense from time to time, and I think you all do too, that sometimes we take this all for granted. In the moment you do that, you put this in danger. None of us wants to be at Detroit, Rochester, New York with everybody up there thought Kodak will never go away. a place like Dayton that's still recovering from major industries. I think it was a business national cash register, which kind of just went away. So we very much need to be engaged, and I know everybody here really wants to be part of that. I can tell you that the two task force that are operating, EDS and ours with our Defense Mission Task Force, are engaged and will be asking for your help. Current military impact, 1/3 of our economy, roughly $9 billion. What we heard out of D.C. is the Fort Carson scenario, 490,000 troops would be good. 450, if we go to 450, it would be okay. 420, there's reason to be concerned. And what we're hearing is a number somewhere between 450 and 420, but I don't think there's a real confidence in that number yet. I think that's still a shifting number. The Air Force is looking at cutting 25,000 people. Was mentioned earlier this morning by somebody around the table that we saw some of that yesterday with a C-130 component apparently going away at Peterson. There's various comments with regard to base realignment. Congressman Lamborn doesn't believe it's going to happen, but we hear from military commanders that they would like to see it happen. The best case scenario is we would actually see gains in the community with regard to missions and commands. The worst case is we would see a base closed or other units moved. Fort Carson alone counts for about $2 billion, as I mentioned earlier, one of my other slides, in economic impact. Aurora, as an FYI, lost over 17,000 jobs in 2 prior BRACs. At a breakfast meeting about a month ago out at Fort Carson, I heard Colonel Grasso say that he believed that Fort Carson was in pretty good shape. And he thought that because his comment was that he doesn't think that there's any other training site that compares with Pinyon Canyon. He thinks that's a real asset for the military. But, again, this is a moving target. There's a lot of politics in play here, as was also mentioned earlier, and we need to be part of that. On your, let's see if I go back here. On your table, I'm not sure I made enough copies. There is a list that was put together by Andy Merritt of other states as their approach as to how they are getting ready for BRAC and what they're doing about it. And from Alabama through to Arizona, Connecticut, Georgia, Kansas, if there's a military installation inside a state, you can believe that right now that they are doing everything possible to protect the interest of their community, and if all possible, to expand. And there are literally millions of dollars with regard to lobbying efforts or lobbying groups being put together to attempt to keep those missions, or those operations where they are, or again expand upon those. And this state right now, from our perspective, is behind in that effort. We're not so far behind that we can't catch up, but we need to be, as was mentioned earlier before, all organized and all working together to make sure that our voice is heard. We need to do that with legislative efforts. We need to do that with the OEDIT, Aerospace and Defense Champion, working at the Governor's Office, as mentioned earlier, with the Defense Mission Task Force, and with the Colorado National Defense Support Council, which was mentioned earlier. Those two on the bottom are I can tell you, are working tightly together. One is the local effort out of Colorado Springs. The other one is more a statewide effort, and Ed can speak to that in some detail. I may end up calling him up here in a minute. We need your help. Support legislative efforts. Get involved with the Defense Mission Task Force. attend MAC or other group military support programs. There's a hail and farewell next Wednesday out at, where is it being held? Guard of the Gods Club, thank you. It starts at 4:30, runs till about 7 o'clock. We have 5 members of City Council. Thank you, Don, for your effort in helping put that together. We're hoping to have a good turnout, and if you could make it out there, we'd appreciate it. The Day at the Legislature is coming up tomorrow. There's an annual trip to Washington, D.C. on December 29th, October 2nd. It's meaningful when local folks show up and show their support for this effort. Our state and federal legislators, the folks at the Pentagon, find that to be very impressive when a large group of local people show up and show support. Help resolve issues. Fort Carson, Gate 19 entrance and road. What we heard at that same breakfast I mentioned earlier is that part of that road is a gravel road, and they're trying to figure out a way to get the 2 miles of it paved. I think it's about $1 million a mile. So if through working with our community and various counties, city, state, however, if we can figure out a way to make that happen, it helps. Peterson Air Force Base is faced with closing down their golf course because of water issues. Right now, as I understand it, they're using city water, which is very expensive. If they can find a way to use non-potable water, that would help a lot. Schriever Air Force Base, we heard a few weeks ago that they're concerned about the number of crashes and fatalities out on Highway 94. And I don't pretend to know the answer to that, but it's a lot of open highway out there. There's a lot of weather out there, particularly in the winter. Maybe there's a way to impact that. And spread the word around the community that we're faced with some downsizing here if we're not careful. We saw a little bit of that yesterday. We could be faced with more of it coming up very soon. We need to be really engaged, encouraging our legislators, particularly at the federal level. Our congressional delegation in Washington needs to be pushing very hard to make sure that we keep the installations that we have here. The governor's office also needs to be very involved in that, and I think you can see from this handout here, most states' delegations are heavily involved, and the governor's offices on nearly every state mentioned here is heavily involved. And I'm not sure that we are as engaged as we need to be right now at this point. But it's not too late, and organizations like this one can make a big difference. I would just encourage you to get behind our Defense Mission Task Force and Ed Anderson's group as well. So with that, I'm open to any questions.
You know, more of a comment than a question. We do have things we can point to that we have done, and somebody around this table probably has a more accurate number than I do, but in the last 7, maybe 8 years, we've spent about $100 million on state and local money on infrastructure leading to and from various installations. So we do have things we can point to. I realize that's in the past. They want to know what are we doing currently.
I'm just worried that we're not doing as much as what we see on here. That's I know we are engaged. I know that this community has always been, and it's a reason that has always welcomed the military here. It's a reason that from what I understand that Colorado Springs is second in preferred places to be in the military. The first being this place in the South Pacific called Hawaii. So if you can't be in Hawaii, I guess you want to be in the mountains. So we've got a lot of good things going for us. We just can't take anything for granted, and we need to have as good or better representation of our community. Particularly, I believe, at the congressional level, both in the Senate and the Congress. And was mentioned before, I mean, being on a key committee is critical, but a loud voice is also critical.
Other comments? Recorder Williams.
Well, I guess let me just clarify or add a little bit to that, your comment, Mr. Chairman. With respect to Fort Carson, the Highway 16 interchange was funded with state funds, and we accelerated that, moved that up with a priority. The Pikes Peak RTA funded the north entrance with 4-laning Academy Boulevard along the north side of Fort Carson. The faster funds, which are state funds that comes from some registration fees, improved the gates and the entrances to the gates on the west side of Fort Carson. So we have addressed all the gates except the one you mentioned on there.
Always asking for more.
So it's not that we have been unaware of the needs.
I don't want to take anything away from our effort at this point. I really don't. I just the demands are not going to decrease. They're going to increase over the coming months and years.
I appreciate it, and really what I wanted to say is this is an interesting presentation because at STAC, the State Transportation Advisory Committee, one of the commissioners was proclaiming that the economic motivators of Colorado and named, I think, 3 items, none of which were defense, and completely ignoring the $6.5 billion impact that defense has. And so I helped correct that individual's misapprehension. But it is challenging at times when folks around the state don't recognize the importance of that. And I think that's where we have been weaker when you compare us to other jurisdictions. When you look at the central importance that a state like Alabama emphasizes, that you have not had the same level of support at the state level that you have had in some other jurisdictions, and that makes it challenging as we compete with Huntsville for various issues. And that's what we continue to need to be able to do, and to make sure that our statewide elected officials and others recognize the importance of the defense industry, and it's not just the Pikes Peak area that is impacted.
May I make a comment on that, please, Wayne? First of all, we have a tendency to take a look at the things that we have done and to feel pretty good. And we should. I mean, those are good things, don't get me wrong. But I can assure you that the states that you talked, like Alabama, Texas, others, are not looking at the good things. They're looking at the negative things, and they will highlight those, and there are some. And so just we can't be complacent, I guess, is what my bottom line is. Second, with regard to the point you raised there with regard to educating the states, you are absolutely right. One of the major thrusts that we are advocating as a part of the National Defense Support Council is a very comprehensive study of the military value to the Colorado economy. It is not there. We have a figure of $6.49 billion, a figure of $9 billion. Those are 2011 figures for the most part. But we just do not have the detail that we need to be able to look at that. Now, in defense of that, the state legislature is looking at putting together some legislation to fund a study. And that's still in the stages of being defined, and we're looking at the drafts and so on and so forth. But the problem with that is, if it goes forward, we won't see anything until April, over a year from now. We need it now. And we've been talking to UCCS and Fred Crowley and the crew over there about doing a detailed study to try to get at that so that we can document and quantify and then educate what the value is. So you are absolutely right. Thank you, incidentally, for correcting that person.
I have a list started. We'll go to Councilmember Knight next.
One of the, while Steve concentrated on needing to protect Carson, the BRAC is also a great opportunity for us to bring other organizations here. And specifically, high on my radar scope is SMC out of Los Angeles. We almost had it in 2005, except for the ranking member in Congress was from that area. Congressman Lamborn talked about this in his State of the Fifth District. Gave a challenge to both Commissioner Clark and myself to make sure that we don't do anything to prevent Peterson from moving out east and protect that land use out there. This is not all. We need to get together not only to protect what we have, but we also have a great opportunity here to grow and bring in some very high paying jobs, rocket science paying jobs.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, and I think some sort of alluded to this, if didn't ask it directly, and I guess I'm going to ask more directly. What do you need us to do? What is the what's the directive or the mission that you'd like to assign to us? So, do you need letters of support? How do you need us to approach this? Does the Military Affairs Council have a strategy in place that you need elected officials to be a part of? And
We are going to need that support, and Ed alluded to that.
it's not that we don't. In conversations that we have every day with, various folks around, not just the community, but those at the federal level.
We have a DMTF meeting coming up next week, and as part of that, we are getting our arms around a specific action plan, if you will. And Larry Fortner is leading that charge in that committee. And so, as I mentioned to you earlier, on the immediate front is get engaged with some of the events that are going on in the community and continue to show support for the airmen and troops that are here. And then down the road, we're going to ask you to be engaged with regard to whether it's letters or whether it's trips to go see key personnel either in Denver or Washington, or send to be part of those two task force, one from the local side and one from the state side. So I don't have a specific answer for you this morning, but I will hear probably within the next 30 days.
And if you can get talking points or bullet points of what we need to be saying, I think I've been in D.C. quite a bit lately, and I'll continue to be through my position with National Association of Counties. So tell us what you need from us, and then give us the mission. Mr. Phelps is ready to take it on, so.
If I could build on a little bit.
Let's hope it's not an impossible mission. So.
If I can build a little bit on what Steve has said. What we do.
Speak into the mic.
I'm sorry. What we do is in the council is we look at this from a state perspective, capitalizing upon all of the local efforts that are underway, such as the DMTF, and that's why I work very closely with Larry. We work with Kevin Hogan up in Aurora, and so on and so forth. What we are looking for in the context of support is, number one, resources. That's part of it. Let me make that very clear. Right now, this is all free. It's people doing things on their spare time. And that's not the way you want to organize for this kind of an effort. You need to have an organized, resourced effort. So resources will be one thing that would be kind of key. The other thing, what we're trying to do is, in addition to recognizing all these efforts that are underway, is to unify the story, put together a message that everybody who goes from Colorado is, in essence, saying the same thing. And so that's a bit of a task, as you can well imagine, just given all of the folks who go here and from here to there. The other part of it is we're looking very hard at resources to have a lobbyist on behalf of Colorado in the D.C. area. Now, the governor has one person back there, but that person's emphasis or experience is in international trade. It is not in defense and the military. We feel as though there is a need, because the other states, number one, have them, and they are doing that, but we feel there is a need for Colorado to have somebody who is representing and listening to us in the Pentagon on a regular basis.
Which was recommended to the governor when he took office. by the transition committee, so
That's interesting. I did not know that.
a
And-
cabinet level position, yeah, because the TAG can't do that.
And when we briefed the governor of the council, we said the same thing. Now, they have put together, they had already identified an individual, that's General Lindell, who is the aerospace and defense industry champion. And industry is kind of the key word there. It's not the military, it's industry. Works for OEDIT up in the governor's office, and in our feeling, that's not what we're talking about. We need somebody who is focused on the military, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Glenn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to build on some of the comments that have been made and to address Commissioner Clark's concerns, that's specifically, that gap is what I'm concerned about and what I'm dedicated to trying to fix working with these committees, because we have a lot of great efforts that are going on with regard to highlighting the things that we've done in the past, some of the things that we're working on in the future. The gap is with the political atmosphere and what we need to do as elected officials. Because I don't know how you guys, the sort of feedback that you get when you're out talking to your communities and to your constituents, but there's a growing level of indifference when it comes to the importance of our mission here in this particular community. And I think we need to make sure that, one, from a policy standpoint, we aren't creating policies that hinder our ability to retain these particular capabilities, but we also need to develop talking points so that we can help educate people on this is what we do. These are the things that we bring to the table as far as making sure that the troops that we put out in the field are adequately trained and ready to be able to perform their mission. These are the talking points that we need to develop and be able to go out and bring into our communities as elected officials. So we need to consolidate that, and that's going to be my role in working with the MAC. But we really need to get up to speed in doing that, because I am so concerned. I've noticed a major drop-off in the past couple of years, just in casual conversations with people. People get so hung up on the number when it comes to cuts, because people are frustrated about the budget, those types of things. We need to focus more on the mission that we have and the fact that there are threats in this world. And Colorado Springs, in particular, in our region, we play a vital role in that, and we need to be able to articulate that message.
To dovetail off of that somewhat, and also on Don Knight's comments, there's also an opportunity to grow here. But one of the issues that's facing Peterson, from my understanding, is they've run out of space. So I would encourage any development around Peterson needs to take into consideration their need for possible more space, more land to accommodate different missions that would come here. So that's something else that the state, city, county governments need to be conscious of when they're looking at how they zone land in and around our forts and bases here.
Could I make one? And I don't mean to dominate the meeting. And first of all, that's a very good point. Thank you for that. But just for a little bit of illumination, the process that we are talking about, the focus has been, as you can see, has been on BRAC. But what happens is there is a step that takes place before BRAC. And those steps are the force structure reduction decisions. Those are done by the services. That's going on as we speak, as you know, based on what we saw from the SecDev. They will determine what the force structure is going to look like as they resize it to accommodate the budget. Following that, then, will come the BRAC. The BRAC will, and remember, the BRAC is an independent commission. It is apolitical. And the reason the services want to have the BRAC is because if they have the BRAC, resources come with it, and downsizing infrastructure will be paid for. As opposed to if the services have to do it on their own, they have to pay for it out of their budgets, which is something they don't want to do, obviously. So that's why you see the services and DOD pushing for a BRAC. And so, but that is, the services and DOD will make their recommendations as to infrastructure closures to the BRAC. The BRAC doesn't have to do anything that the services say. Those will be data points. They will do their tours and go around and talking to folks and make their own determination as to what the alternatives are for infrastructure and what their decisions and recommendation will be to Congress. So, a little bit of illumination there.
Councilmember Thompson?
I think it's my first time to speak. This is blue, is that correct? Okay. Of course, the City of Fountain is thrilled to see Gate 19 back on the thing. I've been going to meetings, I don't know how many years for Gate 19, and nothing happens. So, of course, that's the end. That is kind of the end of our urban renewal program that we're working on the other side of the freeway. So we would be happy to come back to the table. I've been going to meetings. I own property on the other end, so of at Gate 19B. So calling it Gate 19 and gets really confusing down there because there's a 19 at one end and 19B at the other end. But we're really happy to hear this back on the table, and I would love to get together with you guys and discuss some of this stuff.
And final comment? Rob?
Yeah, just the collective knowledge. Wonderful to hear. Wayne's got all of it, and as everyone tags on, I'll tag on to a couple of them. Let me start with Gate 19. When we had our military impact planning program here, Kate is still here, so she won't brief on this. She's changed hats. But part of that Fort Carson growth plan was coming up with a plan and the cost estimate for that road. $6.2 million. We know exactly what to do down there. Met with City of Fountain, El Paso County, Fort Carson. We know exactly what to do. Then it's just funding. And I know Fort Carson's got in for Defense Access Road, DAR funding. I think last I heard it was 17 or fiscal 18 or maybe beyond that. The point being, around this table, when the board looks at doing their long-range plan and then doing the TIP, you start programming some of these things. And your TIP amendments today have things. We've heard from Peterson long time. Help us with Westgate, Powers Boulevard, either an interchange or widening it for $10 million. That helps them reduce congestion. Maybe it's one of those data points that helps the people looking at Mission, how to get more Mission to Peterson. So all these combined, I think the biggest push from all of you is when you put things in your plan and your TIP and say, hey, military base, hey, anyone who's listening, we support our military through some $100 million efforts that this board directs, obviously with their partners of CDOT, local governments, RTA, whomever else. So I think the reminder of that is what we can bring staff-wise through the committees, because they're all your local government staff. The military bases are on those committees, and then up here for discussion. So when you prioritize a TIP amendment or going after Tiger Grant funding we'll talk about later, your Tiger Grant was Fillmore I-25 because the VA clinic is right up the hill from it. So I think this board's done a great job making those linkages when you decide on big transportation dollars. You have that in your discussion. So I think we'll continue to bring that, but I've already heard that all of you are bringing that connection, at least from the military side, to our transportation side. And we'll see where we go.
Thank you. Yes.
Rod Chisholm from Fort Carson. Just wanted to add a little bit of insight, having been on the inside, as to what criteria made a difference when we looked at the 2005 BRAC and those that were gainers and those that were losers. Can't solicit anything as a federal employee, but I can give you some insight. And also, I was at Fort Hood at the time, but I had many years at Fort Bragg and underwent two BRACs while I was serving at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And a lot of it's been said, but to get to Ms. Clark's kind of question, what can you do? Where can you help? The criteria that really is going to make the difference, I think, is going to relate to training and readiness. And that's why Colonel Grosso at the breakfast a week or two ago said, Pinyon Canyon is special for us because it's 236,000 acres. It allows us to do the maneuver and training with the next generation of weapon systems that we would expect to see within the Army. And having looked at the 2005 BRAC results and previous ones, it came down to things like available training, whether you had the airspace as well as the ground space, depending upon the mission of the installation. It got into community things like the medical network or the educational network. And as we had the presentation with the Peak Military Care Network, that is an awesome thing, because those factors were at least considered through the Pentagon when they made the recommendations to the BRAC Commission. But the Pentagon's looking at all of these different things, the age of the infrastructure that exists at the different installations, and where the old ones are going to take a lot of money to reconstitute or refurbish versus the newer construction. I would tell you, here in Colorado, that's a good thing for us right now compared to some other installations. So some of the things is again, education was a big deal. Transition services is going to be a big deal, because the Army's and the Air Force are going to continue to go flex up and down, and having a community that can support transition will be a big weight, I think, in the ultimate. Now, there has been, of course, no decision that has come out of the federal government to institute a BRAC yet, because we're just getting the force structure changes, as General Anderson said. The BRAC is just a tool to implement those bigger decisions that are being made by the administration on what the force structure should be. But I think having seen the elected officials and the government's office and state comptrollers doing studies to support economic impact and stuff like that, that then the military bases were able to use when asked questions by the supporting congressman or whatever, having that data that was supported through the state government was very helpful as well. And I think that what was mentioned about maybe getting funded, even though it may take longer than we would like, having something that actually has the state comptroller or the governor or elected officials say that's the impact that they validated would be a big thing as well in preparation for what may happen.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
So a couple thank yous, actually, and one further explanation. On the explanation, as you know, Colonel John Shaw, who I support, is our installation commander, and he is really looking forward to providing you a presentation that we're working with Rob on, so you can understand the issues that he has to face. And a big challenge is having 56 tenant units on the base, and with Mr. Dan bringing up the golf course issue, and we kind of smile because if you don't understand those 56 tenants, to include 2 four-star generals who literally are your next-door neighbors. So whether it's the toilet you're having a problem with or the fact you want to expand your command footprint, there's a lot to that. And John looks forward to sharing that with you. The golf course comes up a lot because that's a big hunk of land, and we can build on that. But you've got a lot of folks that, from a camaraderie perspective, it brings people together. It brings you collectively. So I know John would say thanks, and he really looks forward to sharing with you what he deals with. And again, Rob's leading that effort, and that's going to be great. On a personal note, if I can do that in uniform, some of you know I'm a local guy. I'm in the reserves. I've lived here since 1995. I've worked at the Air Force Academy. I've worked at Schriever. I've worked at Peterson. In my day gig, I'm in coat and tie working for Booz Allen. Mr. Ed Anderson, friend and mentor when we worked together at Booz. When I look around this room, it's impressive to see this collective team. Some of you served. I look across, at Captain Pico, Colonel Knight, my good buddy Don Lawler, who's a captain in the Navy Reserves, Lieutenant Commander in the Navy Reserves sitting behind me, former Air Force Academy grad. We focus on the military, but I'm so impressed with the civilian blend with the military and how hard you fight. You make us want to stay here. I've been here since '95. I have no intention of leaving. I married a local gal. I finally got the roots I always wanted. I grew up as an Air Force kid, and I've got to tell you, I'm a Cornhusker at heart. That's where I went to school. Don't hold it against me. But my wife, who's local, born and raised on the west side here, her folks so ingrained in the city, they made me want to be a part of this. And to see what you're doing here, to me, is just an example that other cities need to follow. And I say that coming from Omaha, where I spent most of my life, because my pop retired as an Air Force colonel, ingrained in the city of Omaha. They brag about their chamber. And I can tell you, since you have invited us to be a part of this since December, have a few calls with my dad to talk about what you have shown me here. And just another reason why I'm one of those local guys who glad I'm staying here. And when I see my friends like General Anderson, Andy Pico, Don Knight, who happen to be military, and see how ingrained they are, it's nice. And Don, it's nice to be able to brag about what you do, for the city and for the military. And I'm all about bragging rights with my dad, even being an Omaha guy myself. So thanks for what you're doing. And certainly the details that you need have to be addressed. There's no doubt about it. And it's great to see how forward-leaning you are. Having folks like Steve Dant leading the MAC, Don before him, in my opinion, couldn't be more on course for making this a stronger city. Forget the uniforms. You know, we're teammates, we're city mates. And I just want to say thanks as just a guy who lives here. And certainly from a military perspective, it's great to go back to the base. I work at Northcom in my day job. It's great to brag about what you do here on behalf of them, because a lot of folks are transient. But as Kate said, a lot of folks want to come back here and retire. And so on a personal note, thank you very much for all you do for us. And it's great to be a part of your city and your area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
I appreciate your time this morning.
Let's take a quick break before we go back to our action items. Let's do our best to make it no more than 10 minutes. So that's just what I needed.
It's always a nice transition. We have a lot of people for something so they can gracefully get on with their lives.
Okay.
That hour kind of does.
They're
Exactly right.
I didn't know who you were before I started getting involved in these meetings. And I live in your
Call the meeting back to order. Item 6A, Transportation Improvement Program, Amendment Number 14. Rob, you want to take this one?
Yeah.
And he will explain why 14 is ahead of 13.
That's always a good thing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. TIP amendments have really been fluid in the last couple of weeks, couple of months. I think the board will remember a couple of things that I want to cover, but I think let me start with first the staff recommendation for both 14 and 13, as it stands now, is to have the board defer action on that until next month so we can work out some of the details that I'll go over. But I also want to go over other actions. You could take some action on pieces or even TIP Amendment 13. So I just wanted to give you the staff recommendation first because it differs now from your Transportation Committee and your Citizen Committee based on information we just got in the last few days in talking to CDOT. So let me go over some of that. I know CDOT is here. I think the local governments have been part of that as well. But I think a huge thank you to all those folks, CDOT, and I know Tom's here, and I saw Doug, Wendy. There's a lot, and some of the city staff, I won't name everybody. But we got a phone call Monday, and I think we've now verified that we have enough money to do the I-25 Cimarron project. Is it budgeted at CDOT? No. You haven't taken action in a TIP amendment. And the approval process goes, you do a TIP amendment, the state does the STIP amendment, and then it gets budgeted by CDOT. I can't tell you the dates of that, but that's the general flow of how you approve these things. And so the funding categories that we did for Cimarron about a year ago, 11 months ago, the board approved as part of the ramp submittal, all the ramp projects to CDOT. You had about eight funding categories for the Cimarron interchange, and that's obviously part of TIP Amendment 14. We have probably the same categories and maybe two more funding categories as CDOT Region 2, CDOT headquarters have gone through their books. We don't have that for you today. I think we could probably collectively name them, but it's part of why we want another month to solidify those funding categories that add up to all the money that we currently know we need for Cimarron interchange. So that's the big piece of TIP Amendment 14. And so we now, and CDOT is here too, and our commissioner, Les Gruen's here. Those are the kind of the decision points along the way. But also part of TIP Amendment 14 are CDOT has said for the I-25 Fillmore project, they're short about $2 million. There were some reports in some local papers that identified some of that. The committees, the TAC and the CAC, they found money in the existing TIP to plug in $2 million so CDOT can go forward with the Fillmore project. And that one, I think, and Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that one's on hold. They can't bid it until they have all the money put together. So that $2 million is a real need to find sooner than later. And again, it's a TIP amendment today, but as I said, staff-wise, we want another month to address that one as well. Third piece of TIP Amendment 14 is Powers Boulevard widening project. It was submitted under the RAMP program. It was not approved for funding, but the priority is still there. It's one of the board priorities. It's one that we want to try to get fulfilled because in talking with the local governments and talking to the installation, they think widening Powers Boulevard will carry them traffic-wise for a while, 10 years, 8 years, some number of years, so they don't have to build, or someone doesn't have to build a $40 million interchange out there for the ultimate solution. So this interim solution has been put on by the TAC, the CAC, as a recommendation for TIP Amendment 14. Once again, we like to look at that for another month through the committees with CDOT to try to find a way to get that funded. And then TIP 13, TIP Amendment 13, again, unanimous recommendation from your committees and staff now to table it, but the project is $4.1 million of strategic corridor money, a very rare find of money through CDOT. Strategic corridor dollars, we haven't seen in a while, so we were happy to see that. It came in as TIP Amendment 13, and we bumped it just after 14 because we wanted the committees, staff, and now the board to have that discussion. With this very rare dollar, $4.1 million from strategic corridors, where would the board, in conjunction with CDOT, like to spend that money? CDOT's recommendation, obviously, is to fix I-25 with the list of things that you can see in your packet. But not knowing if there's a funding gap, and we didn't really know that until about Monday, that $4.1 million as strategic corridor money can go on our two strategic corridors, Powers Boulevard or I-25. So if the board chose, they could decide that $4 million may be better served at finishing Fillmore because the VA clinic's coming and maybe we want to get that project done. Or is it important to work with Peterson to try to backfill that? And before Monday, was there a funding gap in the Cimarron interchange? So we wanted the board to have a checkoff on that $4.1 million before it headed out to a project. Because once it goes, CDOT is great. They're going to go get it done as soon as they can. So that's why we're trying to put these two TIP amendments together. I'll offer to take questions. I know CDOT and staff are here to answer questions. But the staff recommendation is to give us another month to work with CDOT, the committees, the local governments, to nail down these funding scenarios and come back to the board with a TIP amendment for next month. In talking to CDOT, it does not appear it'll delay the Cimarron project because it's a design build. So if that TIP amendment doesn't happen until next month and then STIP amendment and action by the commission, I think we're okay timing-wise to do that next month. And so that's where we're coming from as a recommendation. We understand CDOT may want to talk to the board about TIP 13 to go forward, and that's a board decision if you wanted to do that.
Thank you. I would like to hear from CDOT, and feel free to talk about both items. We will take action separately, but they do seem to be kind of interrelated. So, Commissioner Gruen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me make a couple of comments as your commissioner. Sorry I wasn't at last month's meeting. I may have been able to have alleviated some concerns and confusion. And I think there was some confusion and miscommunication. I-25 in Cimarron at our commission meeting next month will be fully funded, and there was never any doubt of that. There was some doubt of what pot, where we were going to find those dollars, and Tom and his colleagues did a heck of a job coming up with that. So, again, I apologize for any confusion. I saw a headline one morning that there was a shortfall, and was sort of surprised to see that, and I hope people weren't as surprised and confused as I was about that. But anyway, we're going to be in good shape about that. Again, thanks, Tom, for getting that figured out.
I'd like to thank you, Les, and the rest of the commission for their support
with that project. Les made sure the commission never forgot about that project or my executive director. The project's always been at the forefront, and this board as well. Thank you. It's much easier to go after funding for these projects when we know we have the complete support of the board behind us as the number one priority for the area.
Tom had some incentive. The executive director was in Hawaii at our last month's meeting, and then he had to go to Washington, D.C., and it was suggested that if it wasn't figured out before Don was back in town, there'd be a meeting and it would get figured out. So all of a sudden it got figured out. And anyway, it never was in doubt. It was just some of the details on where these dollars were coming from. And as you've heard before, the way we're financing things at CDOT is changing a little bit from a decentralized program to more of a centralized program, especially on projects of this magnitude. At last month's commission meeting, Fillmore was presented, and the commission was told that things became more expensive than originally intended. There was an extra $2 million of cost that I understand is going to be covered by a $1.3 million contribution from the city and $700,000 from CDOT. So that $2 million gap, what was supposed to be a gap, really isn't a gap. It's been covered, and we're in good shape to move forward. So to the extent that things need to be postponed for a month to get a few things ironed out from the STIP standpoint, I don't think that's going to make any difference from the CDOT standpoint. And again, Tom and his team deserve a lot of credit. I know he's worked closely with Kathleen at the city and everyone who is working hard to make things work.
Other comments? Councilmember Pico.
Yeah, I think waiting for a while to get it all straightened out makes a lot of sense. I was somewhat intrigued by part of your comment that said there was going to be a $1.5 million contribution from the city.
Councilman Pico, I heard that there was an agreement, and I don't know where this money is coming from, but that the city was going to kick in $1.3 million and CDOT was going to kick in $700,000. I didn't ask the detail on where $700,000 is coming from our budget or where $1.3 million is coming from your budget. If you'd like to pursue that before.
I think we're about to have an answer.
Kathleen Krager, City Traffic Engineer. We have known about the shortfall on Fillmore for a while and are really desperately looking at how to backfill that because the last thing we would want to do is lose $11 million back to a different ramp project because we couldn't come up with the last $2 million. But now bear with me because this gets complicated. The local match for the Fillmore interchange was the relocation of Chestnut, which the city did as a PPRTA project. And you notice that Chestnut's no longer part of the ramp signal, and it's now up the hill, and it's already working much better at that intersection. It's made a huge improvement at the interchange. But that improvement had to be done in order to do the interchange improvement itself. So we were able to count that as part of the local match. When we did that project of relocating Chestnut, we needed the right-of-way that were 2 gas stations located at the original Chestnut and Fillmore, if you remember them. At the time, and ramp funding wasn't thought of at that time and that type of thing, CDOT had money for right-of-way. So CDOT graciously said, we need those gas stations as well for our future interchange. We'll purchase the 2 gas stations for you, and you guys spend your $7 million on relocating Chestnut, which is what we did. Well, it was very gracious of CDOT and very helpful at the time. Now CDOT is in trouble as far as being short money to complete the interchange. So our thought is to look at money that we have available through PPRTA. We've scrounged our budgets and found $700,000, and I will go back next month to PPRTA board to request that $700,000 plus 600,000 additional money as an invoice to be paid to CDOT to pay them back for the right-of-way that they purchased for our A-list project of the relocation of Chestnut. And is that confusing enough for everyone at this time in the morning? Okay, so if that all works, and there's an if involved there, but there's a certain graceful logic to it. If that all works, that would amount to the $1.3 million that CDOT had previously spent on our Fillmore project that we could pay them back with PPRTA funds, and that would be then used as backfill for the DDI interchange.
Did that cover it?
Well, that clarified it, but I guess it falls into the pending category, if I understood you correctly.
It does. I'm ready. I actually had a memo prepared and was ready to take it to this month's PPRTA, but I delayed it by a month because of this TIP amendment going on. I thought it might be confusing if our elected officials heard in the morning that it was being funded by PPACG, and then I went to them in the afternoon and said, no, just kidding, it wasn't being funded by PPACG, I want to fund it through PPRTA. There's a point where even those of us that live and breathe finance of transportation projects gets utterly and hopelessly confused, and I think that was the point. So I will submit that memo, and we will look at it at the April PPRTA. If PPRTA board wants to call it up to at least for information this afternoon, we could do that as well. Thank you.
Which will follow next month, yeah. The idea of tabling for clarification sounds like a great idea.
Let's go to Clerk and Recorder Williams.
So, just to clarify then, these are Pikes Peak RTA funds, not city funds, that are being used, obviously for a project within the city, but in terms of where that source is coming from, it's yet another hopefully successful project that's as a result of the voters' approval of the Pikes Peak RTA.
Thank you. Tom Rona, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did, Chairman. I'd just like to say that I appreciate the working relationships, the partnerships that we have with the board, the staff here, the city and county officials, transportation folks. It's wonderful. We have a great cooperative spirit, and we're accomplishing some great things. And I wish I could tell you that I had all the money to make Fillmore whole right now, but in reality, I called in all my favors. I swept all the corners. I played all my cards, everything I could to come up with the money to make the Cimarron I-25 interchange project complete. So we've got that gap, and I think Kathleen's got a good plan, or some other local source of money to make up that 1.3. The commission's okay with us. Unless can verify this, that $700,000 gap, that's something that we could most likely cover, hopefully with good bids, and if not good bids, the RAMP program, can stand to, as large as it is, to take that piece of the deficit and make it whole. But I'm really running out of sources here for funds. And I appreciate everything you guys have done, and also wanted to say that I really would like to push the issue and press forward with, I believe it's the TIP Amendment 13, the funding for the I-25 North widening. That project is well underway, and these are actual costs due to unforeseen conditions when the project was bid and as it was moving forward, and this funding is necessary to make this project whole, and we want to be able to continue to make payments to our contractor and keep them moving with the ultimate completion of, I believe, either June or July of this summer with that project.
So you would like to see that item approved then as
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. Yeah.
Okay. Who did I have next? Councilmember Miller, did you have a comment? Okay. Rob, I believe I saw your hand.
I think it was answered.
Okay. That's what I get for starting a list. Commissioner Clark, I didn't look your direction.
Let's call it
I'm just glad we have the money, so.
Any further comments? Do we have a motion to postpone item A, which would be tip amendment 14 for 30 days?
So moved.
Second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Yes, Councilman.
Well, if I understood correctly, you'd rather see this move forward as opposed to postpone.
That was 13.
Or was that the next one?
Tip Amendment 13.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you
I'm
said
I'm
14.
agreeable to postponing 14.
Oh.
Deferring that till next time.
My confusion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 6B is tip amendment 13, which, Brian, you've heard the discussion, so what more do we need to know?
I can just be here for any questions or ask for CDOT's assistance for any technical questions on the project or the request, but it was just adding $4.17 million to the I-25 North Widening project.
And as our Region 2 Director pointed out, that's to continue the work that has begun and is nearing completion, actually. Very nice up there.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Good news, by the way, from the CDOT folks. Thank you for being diligent in finding those funds. We've known since before it was an approved project that we didn't have all the money in a bucket or even several buckets that we could identify, but you, along with your executive director, Don Hunt, have always said, if it's approved, we'll find the money. And even before it was approved, said it is a priority. So thank you. 7C, 2040 Transportation Plan. Brian, you're still there. I'm assuming
Still
that
here.
means it's yours.
It's mine, yeah. Good morning. Brian Vituli with PPACG's Transportation Program. This is an information-only item. You'll be seeing this next month for approval. Last month, you approved the goals and performance measures for the development of our 2040 Regional Transportation Plan. We're continuing moving forward with that, and now we're working on developing or refining the objectives and targets and the evaluation criteria that we'll use to evaluate and score projects for inclusion into the plan. The objectives and targets are used to measure progress towards each goal by identifying time bands and manageable ways to achieve them. PPACG staff will use the evaluation criteria to identify areas of need and to score the projects submitted to us by our local governments to be included into the 2040 plan. You'll see attachment 1, there's only one attachment with this item, represents the draft objectives, targets, and evaluation criteria that we presented to the TAC and the CAC in February. Received a little bit of input from them. Staff also had some input. So what you see now is kind of our working copy. We're planning to take this back to the TAC and the CAC in April this month. No, this is March, excuse me. And then come back to you in April for approval. And I just wanted to highlight a few items. This matrix, which shows some of the actions that you've already taken, the goals and performance measures, the vision, the mission, those items have been done already, but there's the objectives, the targets, and the evaluation criteria that we're working on. We pretty much started where we left off about 2 years ago with the adoption of our 2035 Regional Transportation Plan. So the thought was it's a very current effort. Let's not try to reinvent it. So we presented it to our committees that way, with the exception of updating those time bands to 2020, 2030, 2040. So that's how we'll measure the progress for our goals. And we also updated some information, later information that we got from the federal government and the state government, USDOT and CDOT, as far as performance measures and goals that they're using, so we can be consistent with them. So attachment 1 is our working copy. Both the TAC and the CAC did agree very, I'd say very strongly. They know that we're really in a time crunch to get this plan done. So they agree with the method to start with the old version and update it. And they had a few comments, and like I said, they've been incorporated in this attachment 1. But we'll continue working with them this month and come back to you next month for approval. And if you look page 2 of the memo, you'll see the first 6 bullets under the 2040 RTP schedule and context. Those are items we've already completed. The board's already approved those. Like I said last month, you just approved the goals and performance measures and the small area forecast. Now we're working on the objectives and evaluation criteria. So we have a very, very aggressive schedule. We're hoping to stay on task and look for adoption by the end of the year for our plan and have a draft out by the fall for you to review. And following the adoption of the evaluation criteria and objectives next month, we'll start the evaluation criteria weighting, and that's an effort that will most likely have a facilitated process, a workshop with our TAC and our CAC to go through a weighting of the evaluation criteria. So that's something we can use some outside help with to help explain what is kind of a difficult subject, especially when there's numbers involved. It's good to have some expert help with that. So we'll probably do that sometime in April. We're hoping, I believe our schedule says, if we can have our committees act on the weighting or have discussion on weighting in April, I think we'll be okay with our schedule. So that's coming in the next couple months. So are there any questions?
Questions? Yes, Commissioner Steen.
Brian, how often do we sample points to, are they annual measurements when we take progress towards a particular goal? Are they biannual, or when do we dip the dipstick to say where we are?
Well, I think once we get our plan adopted, we need to make sure that we have baseline data to measure future data on. So, and the objectives that are in that matrix show, it's something, it seems like once we adopt our plan, we already start developing the next plan. So somewhere in between that, we need to develop a process for measuring how our performance is on the goals.
So is it an ongoing measurement, or are there specific times that we collect data, survey, whatever it is, that produces some results in periodic reports?
The MAP 21 actually requires us to do a system progress report every year. We have to submit it to CDOT and Federal Highway, so we'll be doing it every year on our goals. And with the projects that are selected in the TIP, we actually have to say before the project is implemented, this is the progress we expect to be made. So we expect with 77 intersections interconnected, we expect a 5% improvement in flow. We have to sample the data before and then after and see if we actually achieve that. So it'll be a yearly report to CDOT Federal Highway plus individual project reports that about their portion of achieving to the goal. So,
Other questions? Okay, moving on to 7D. Brian, this is yours as well. I will let you introduce it.
Thank you. With the passage of the new federal transportation legislation, MAP 21, moving ahead for progress in the 21st century, this item was before you about a year ago. The MPO was asked, how do we want to handle the allocation of Federal Transit Administration 5310 funds? And what the board decided was that the City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metropolitan Transit would continue to be the designated recipient of the funds, but that PPACG would would do the project selection process. So a year later, back in the fall, we published, working with Mountain Metro Transit and PPACG staff, we developed a program management plan that outlines how we will conduct the process, who's going to be on the evaluation committee, develop the evaluation criteria for scoring the projects, and we had a call for projects later in 2013, and I believe the applications were due by mid-December. So PPACG staff formed an evaluation committee made up of representatives of various committees and boards. We have 2 members from our mobility coordinating committee that represent the disabled community. We had 1 representative from the City of Colorado Springs Citizens Transportation Advisory Board, that's the CTAB, who was also a rep for the PPRTA-CAC. We had a CDOT representative who also serves on our TAC, and we had a PPACG Community Advisory Committee member. So we had 5 voting evaluation committee members, and several of those wear a couple different hats and represent different committees. So this was the group that was just going to be doing the evaluating and the scoring. Myself, I kind of coordinated the process, and we had staff from Mountain Metro Transit providing oversight. And neither of the city staff or myself or other PPACG staff were voting members. We just helped conduct the process. So the 5310 funds, it's known as the Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities program. So they provide funds that enhance the mobility of seniors and persons with disabilities. There were also some leftover 5317 funds, New Freedom funds, that was added into this call for projects. So 5317 funds seek to reduce barriers to transportation services and expand the transportation mobility options for people with disabilities. So we met several times with the evaluation committee in February. The attachment that is included in your item, it's a spreadsheet that represents the recommended funds or funds requested from the applicants and how far down we could allocate funding for those projects. You can see the top 8, I don't know if you have a colored copy, but the top 8 projects all the way down through Common Works are being recommended by the evaluation committee for funding. Most of them had their request met, so they're fully funded. 2 of the AMBLICAB projects, funds that they were requesting, $86,000, that was for 3 replacement vehicles. The evaluation committee felt that they could do with 2 because one of their vehicles was still fairly low in mileage. So they just granted 2 vehicles. And then the justification for AMBLICAB's other project, they requested $158,000 and they were awarded $105,000. It was that they could do with a little less operations money since they had less vehicles. And this, they further justified it by partially awarding those 2 projects. They could go further down the list, and because they felt that Common Works replacement vehicle request for $48,000. There was a strong need for that, and so they wanted to try to fund that. The 3 lower projects, while all good projects, they just scored lower in the process and were not recommended for funding by the evaluation committee. So I've been presenting this to all of our committees and boards. I visited the Mobility Coordinating Committee, the Regional Advisory Council, PPACG CAC, PPRTA CAC, and CTAB last week. I'll go to our TAC next week, this month, and then I'll come back to you in April for final approval from you. The board, PPACG board, is approving this allocation of funds, and then the Transit Services Director from Mountain Metro Transit will concur that the process was conducted fairly and equitably. Are there any questions?
Questions, comments? Commissioner Clark?
So, Brian, on the last page, or on the back page, I guess I would say, the column on the far right is what's been recommended, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, the
And
two
so
right columns.
the ones that were not recommended for approval were the Fountain Valley Senior Center and what is RMHCS again?
Rocky Mountain Healthcare Services.
Okay. So can you explain why those came up? I mean, did you look at one of the criteria as to the financial, ability for these organizations to be able to fill in the gap for those dollars? I mean, when I look at, I don't know about the Rocky Mountain Health one, but I do know Fountain Valley Senior Center it's not like a huge major corporation. They're on a shoestring. So can you please explain that?
Sure. Well, all of the projects were scored out of 5 or 6 different criteria, and some of them were ability to carry out the services, their financials, and just the type of service that they provide. So this is very similar to some of the evaluation criteria that we use to score transportation projects for the regional plan. Different criteria, but the same intent is to try to get a feel for the type of services. So those 3 lower scoring projects, the evaluation committee just scored them consistently. And really, the point spread is not that great. There were 500 total points that an applicant could have scored.
Was there any ability for you to partially fund some of these and move the money around a little bit rather than awarding full funding for some and none for others?
Yeah, that's what I mentioned with the 2 AMBLICAB projects. Those are awarded partial funding. So that was the evaluation committee's intent, was to try to award where the greatest need was. And so AMBLICAB had 2 vehicles that were fairly old, very high in mileage, so they agreed to fund those, but the 3rd vehicle was still fairly young. So they decided not to fund that, and they partially funded their operations request.
And I would ask,
So,
I don't know if Commissioner Heisey has more information on the Fountain Valley one, if that was are those vehicles on their last tires or whatever? I don't know. Is this something that concerns you about Fountain Valley Senior Center?
Concerns, yes. Is it the death knell? No. We'll look at other avenues.
Because I would point out that they provide rides to folks in other areas of the county that aren't served by others to our seniors. And so I'm just concerned when I see, not that anyone is nonprofits have a hard time no matter big or small. You still are, everything is relative. But I just look at the size of some of these nonprofits and wonder if there was some way to look at this a little bit differently. I'd like to know why it wasn't graded high enough.
Well, one thing I'll point out is all of the applicants had to provide statistics on, the age of their vehicle, mileage, and all of that. And the Fountain Valley vehicle only had 64,000 miles on it. So that was one of the determining factors that the committee looked at. The one AMBLICAB vehicle that they didn't fund had 90,000 miles on it. So, the need to replace something with 150, 170,000 miles on it was greater, and that was one item that the evaluation committee pointed out, that it was a fairly young vehicle.
Okay, well, you offered to provide additional information, and I'd like to get that. So I know we just have like a one-page memo in here, so.
Well, what I can do, and I promised this and sent it out to the PPRTA-CAC because they had a lot of questions, I can provide a link to Jason. He can send it out to all of the board members so you can see how our process was conducted, the evaluation criteria. You could probably find all the answers that you need in there, but
And again, they're all good agencies. I'm not
Sure.
criticizing any. I just wonder how the prioritization works. And I do worry about smaller nonprofits that provide to a specific segment that no one else provides for. And they're
Thank you.
traveling in sometimes remote areas of the county. You don't want a vehicle to break down because it's got too many miles on it.
Other questions or comments? Thank you, Brian.
thank you.
7E would be Federal Tiger Grant Project Prioritization. Rob, do you want to take that one? Craig's got it.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I'm passing around the stack agenda, which will be the next item. In the stack agenda, one of the items discussed is the Tiger Grant. Tiger stands for Transportation Investments Generating Economic Recovery. This will be the 6th iteration of this program. The first 2 iterations, the projects, CDOT submitted a project from our region. It was the interchange at Peterson and Powers Boulevard. That wasn't scoring well on the national level, so talking to CDOT and looking at projects that would score better, we changed over to Fillmore for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th iterations of the Tiger Grant, and that has been scoring well. In having some brief discussions with CDOT about projects in our region to submit, the Fillmore interchange has come up again with the thought that any funds that were available then could be put on the Fillmore, and any of the ramp funds or other funds would go to another project like Cimarron or another priority project that was ramp selected. So in talking with CDOT, I think that's the direction they're going, and this would be the projects that would be submitted by Colorado DOT. Local entities can still submit projects. They're due April 28th, and last time for Tiger 5, the town of Windsor was successful in getting about $3 million for a railroad truck interface, so that those local projects do succeed in funding. It's not just the DOT-supported ones.
I'd like to ask our CDOT representatives, if this were to come through and freeing up ramp dollars, would those ramp dollars stay in this region? Do we have any idea how they might be used?
First of all, Mr. Chair, could I tag on to what Craig just said?
Absolutely.
I don't know if Craig's privy to this or Rob or anyone else in the room, but I've got an early indication that the Cimarron application won't fare very well and probably isn't going to make the cut. At least there'll be some discussion about this on Friday at STAC. And the main thing, and I'm probably the one to blame for this, is that one of the requirements, the minimum requirement was that the urban projects that were applicants needed to have a $10 million minimum request.
Tom meant Fillmore, not Cimarron.
I'm sorry, correct me. Fillmore. Yeah. Thanks, Les. Yeah, it's the Tiger. We're talking Tiger though, right?
Right.
Okay, we're talking Cimarron Tiger. I'm Fillmore Tiger. All right. Anyway, Fillmore. Let me get that straight. So let me gather myself here now. Yeah. So the Fillmore has a $2 million gap, not a $10 million gap. And you know, in all fairness, and I understand where our staff's coming from, they said, you know, we don't really want to take the approach that if you've already got the project essentially funded and you have a plan for completely funding it, and you're not going to hear about whether this project's successful until after the date you already plan to advertise the project to construction, why move forward with this one? And for a lot of reasons it makes sense. Okay, is that not to move forward on this one. And it puts us in somewhat of a difficult position here then from the Pikes Peak area that we don't have a project. But I guess I've got another recommendation or something I'd like to suggest. Perhaps we go back to the earlier project, the important project there at the intersection of Airport and Powers Boulevard, State Highway 21. Focus in on the widening of Fountain, the smaller project. Originally, it was the large interchange that we went after before. Talking about a more scaled-back version, the one that Rob pointed out here in the tip amendment, the suggestion in his narrative, addressing that project and going after a $10 million Tiger. And I don't know if we can whip that together and try and make a case for that for this Friday, or if, as Craig also mentioned, we've had some locals, jurisdictions that have been successful as the main applicant, with CDOT providing a letter of support. Maybe that's a better approach. I tell you what, I like that approach just because I look at the competition and I see a C470 managed lanes project, a tolling project, multimodal, $220 million, but only asking for 20 to make it complete. That's going to be a hard one to compete against, guys. You know, I don't know whether you want to put all that effort in real quick to try and get one that's going to try and knock the doors off of that project. I don't know if we can do that, but it may make some sense to come from as a local project, maybe taking that approach. Might be looked at a little bit more favorably. There's the big guy getting a project to CDOT, and maybe the City of Springs, not such a big player, is successful with their application of their own. But I'm looking at that area, that other project, and try that approach. And I think we can put together, our staffs can work together and put a good application together for that important intersection there at Powers and Airport, and try and relieve that congestion down there.
I realize that's about, that fits the $10 million category, but do local projects have that $10 million level? Craig mentioned $3 million went to Windsor, so do the local applications?
I believe that was a different set of rules last year and different thresholds, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Gruen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like Tom's recommendation. Like budgetary matters, the ultimate projects that get passed forward are ultimately a commission decision. And I'd be surprised if the commission is going to do anything different than they've done in the past. In the past, we've tried to limit the number of projects that we endorse, and I think we're going to do that again this year. We haven't had those discussions, so I don't know how many we're going to go forward with, but for the reasons that Tom mentioned, his concerns about the viability of Fillmore, I tend to agree. I really like the idea of trying to do something with Powers. And whether that's done with through CDOT or locally, I'm not sure what makes most sense, and I don't know if it's viable to try to do it through CDOT, and if that doesn't work, go local or have more discussions with the people that really are familiar with these things to see which way makes most sense. I'm certainly happy to support a CDOT grant for Powers. I just don't know what it's going to be competing against, and if we're just going to go with one or two statewide, in which case it might be tough, as Tom said, to compete against a 470 application.
Clerk and Recorder Williams?
Prefer to.
Councilmember Miller?
I guess I just wanted to clarify the $2 million shortfall in Fillmore. Are you saying that wouldn't rate well? Because there was some, with Ms. Krager's explanation of the right-of-way purchases, and then there's a $700,000 shortfall that was thought that CDOT. Is that what we're talking about here, that wouldn't rate well?
No, well, it's going after that gap, that piece, but the timing doesn't appear to be right for that, because we need to get together as partners and make that project move forward prior to the time that we don't want to just sit and wait to see if we're going to be successful with a Tiger application when the opportunity is here to move forward now. And not only that, but I mentioned that limitation of I don't believe that those that are reviewing the grants, there's going to be I don't know how many thousands of these grants will come in from across the nation competing for this pot of $660 million, and roughly there'll be there'll be $10 to $20 million awards granted, and some smaller for rural areas. But what I'm getting at is that I'm thinking that there's a reason why they put the $10 million minimum on the urban applications. I think they're trying to limit that number, and that's what I'm hearing from my policy office is that they don't want to push forward and really get behind one that's just for a smaller. I hate to say $2 million is a small amount, but in this scenario it is.
And if I could I follow?
Certainly.
With that said, you said you'd be supportive of CDOT doing a local project request with the CDOT endorsement. Is that seen as mixed signals from CDOT because they didn't get chosen to go forward as part of a CDOT request, but yet they're endorsing it as a local request? I mean, is there any?
If I can answer that one, Councilman Miller, no. They're just two different programs. And one is, I think there was another one in addition to what Craig had mentioned that was funded under that scenario on the west slope as well. Do you remember what that one was, Tom?
No, I don't.
Was it the one in Rifle? There was one in Rifle that was funded, but I don't know if that was a Tiger.
I can't recall specifically what it was, but I don't think that puts us at a disadvantage.
Okay.
I think moving forward with the CDOT application on Fillmore is an application that would be going nowhere.
Clerk Recorder Williams.
Okay, so now I got to ask my definition because I know our boundaries are weird. Craig, Gate 19.
Outside the MPO.
Is outside the MPA,
Yes.
MPO, so would be a rural project.
Yes.
Not subject to the $10 million limit.
Not subject to the $10 million.
So here's this is a lot of work because it hasn't been done. Modifying an existing one's not so hard. And this wouldn't be a CDOT app because it's not a CDOT road, but it would have to be done locally. Fillmore's going to get done, and holding off to see if we got a Tiger grant for it doesn't make. I agree with Commissioner Gruen that it doesn't make sense to do that. I think when you look at that tip proposal we just had, that there's a way to get the Peterson one done, and I guess. Looking at the state's largest primary employer, Fort Carson, is there a way to pull that together by the deadline for the Gate 19 access road?
It's outside the MPO. We can't use our funds for it. So it'd have to be a local project to prepare that.
This is one
Just
of those.
in the spirit of full disclosure, the county has discussed whether we would submit, after seeing Windsor's success, the county discussed whether we would submit a separate proposal. Victoria, do you know if that has gone beyond the discussion stage, knowing the deadline is coming up?
Hello, Victoria Chavez, El Paso County. The easy answer is I have not yet been directed to write such a grant.
Okay.
What other discussions have happened above my head, I'm not sure.
When's the deadline?
I believe. Thank you.
April 28th at 3 p.m.
I thought local had a little different deadline than, no? Okay.
I guess so given the different deadline, maybe it makes sense then to go with the Peterson as a request for CDOT, but recognize we may not get it. It may not be one of the ones selected by CDOT. And certainly given the number of regions and projects in the state, once they're only going to choose 2 or 3, it may not be one of the ones selected. But I think a partnering member government submission of Fountain and El Paso County for Gate 19 would make a lot of sense to say, let's see, and we begin that process of that dialogue of why this is important.
I think, and Kathleen, you will weigh in, I know you. I think the recommendation was if we do the powers, that would be a city application with a letter of support from CDOT. I'm not sure the nuances of all of that.
Well, like like Wayne said, we could try it either way. I mean, we could. Wayne could make an eloquent pitch. If I gave him dollars on a napkin and let him run with it on Friday in front of the stack, he may get into the top 3. The top 3 will move forward. Right now, it's not even on a list.
There's some napkins over there.
So Kathleen, do you have comments?
I do, as far as running with this as a city, and not that I'm not always looking forward to, writing grant applications on my weekend, but from a city standpoint, first of all, I have to acknowledge the city process, that we have a grant committee that determines, what grants we should go after, because they have local match and they use up a lot of staff time and that type of thing. So I'm really not authorized to just go, hey, yeah, I'll do that. I'd have to go through a process, and April 28th is coming up awfully quick. But now the two sort of problems I have with it is that the Powers Widening project is a project that is greatly needed right now. It is one of my few intersections in the city that is a legitimate level of service F that I could improve to a level of service C with what really is not all that much money. It doesn't require a big interchange, that type of thing, to improve. And if I do this as a Tiger grant, even if I were to get it, I would be a year away from coming up with the funds to get started with it. And it's a very complicated process for one that is so important to me. The other is the city has written these grants any number of years and written some fairly big and impressive grants. And what we find when we look at who received those grants are that they went to projects that were heavily involved in transit, which the Powers Widening is not, heavily involved with the freight industry. They would be like the Windsor project, go with the trucking industry, or they go with the ship industry in San Diego. Those are the projects that seem to be getting Tiger grants and not an expressway improvement or an intersection improvement. They're just not getting Tiger grants, and they haven't been getting Tiger grants for any reason whatsoever. The final thing, and I just hate to say this, is that when you look at who's been getting the Tiger grants, they tend to lean toward one side of the congressional aisle. And we tend to lean toward the other side of the congressional aisle here. I don't know how else to say that. And but we, I do have to look at where that money goes each year and ask myself, is it worth the effort at this time for us to pursue that? And so the decision had been made at the city that we weren't going to do any Tiger grants this year. If everyone thought it was just a great idea, I could, try to get through the process and that type of thing. But I have to be honest, I think that, first of all, we wouldn't get the money. We wouldn't find out that we're not getting the money until next fall, which means that then we've delayed this important project and trying to find funding for this important project for a long time. And would be unfortunate.
Commissioner Clark?
So, politics aside, or all politics is local, but it also
which
gets
way
to
I'm
DC.
leaning today? Okay.
I am inclined and to, I understand where you're coming from, Kathleen, but I think that I am inclined to, because there are other issues, I'll try and say this tactfully, at work here. If our folks from CDOT and our Transportation Commissioner are telling us to go ahead and submit a certain project, I think we have more chance of being successful than if we submit a project that they're not so hopeful about. Regardless, $600 million didn't go very far when you're splitting it amongst, 3,096 counties nationwide, and how many other cities there are. I think that we need to really focus on putting forward the projects that we think not only make sense, but as you pointed out, you know, we just keep plugging along and trying to get the money for this. Well, here's an opportunity for us to one more time try again. And, you know, persistence does pay off many times, not all the time, but mine's the glass is half full. And I think that we have an opportunity. And not only that, I think this Powers project is integrated into the support for our military, and I think that's a good reason for us to support this. And I, you know, I'm West Sider. I like Fillmore. I want Fillmore done too. But if we're not going to be successful, let's not waste our time on that. Let's try and work with our transportation folks and our commissioner. And I think on that, the other question that I keep wanting to say commissioner, but Clerk and Recorder Williams said, with regard, and our Commissioner Heisey, with regard to the Fort Carson project, that could be submitted separately. So I think we need to think about that too. But I'm for going for what our advisors, we could call them consultants, whatever we want to call them, but there are advisors that say this has a chance of making it. Let's try and make it. And it has a military connection, the Powers, and if we're not going to be successful, let's not waste our time on it. Let's try and figure out what else to do with it. So that's where I'm coming from. I think we need to figure out a way to be as successful as possible. And maybe they'll take pity on us this time because we've missed the boat so many times. Maybe this time it'll pull into port.
Yeah, the pity vote didn't work for me on Tiger 2, 3, 4, or 5, so.
Councilmember Pico?
Well, I was just wondering, might we start working on getting the Powers all the way through to the freeway part? And if you want to talk intermodal, you know, that's got a direct link back to the airport.
That was Tiger 1.
That was Tiger 1. So why not try it again, you know? And
as I say, the real problem seems to be with the Tiger grants is that the ones that we're turning on in are predominantly auto-centric transportation improvement projects.
Well,
and they're not getting funded through Tiger. If I were adding a high occupancy vehicle lane to Powers for transit, then I might stand a chance with Tigers. Or if I were doing a truck terminal connection on Powers for a major trucking industry, I might stand a chance.
yeah, but my point about that was it is making an interconnection with the airport because that's the main corridor route, and it's a significant factor on that. So, it's all wordsmithing in the application grant, but I mean, we ought to start putting that, floating that one back up as a priority. Maybe we won't get it this time, but at some point, we kind of need to get that state highway, run through to the federal connection.
I guess I'll give you my two hesitations here.
Yeah.
One is that I cannot commit to writing a grant on behalf of the city of Colorado Springs. I have people that I have to answer to in a process that I have to go through, and they might not find the staff effort and the local match commitment to be worth it at this time. I can ask for it, but that is, I can't make that commitment.
And we could assist with that.
Yeah. The other thing is that if we have other ways of looking for that money to get the funding moving immediately on Powers, I would hate to drop those funding sources while we sit and wait until fall for a Tiger announcement to be made that would disappoint us again.
Well, yeah, but that's why I was suggesting the Powers extension, because
And
that's
go with
more
the
of a
Powers
long range.
extension.
That's more of a long range project.
Councilman, are you talking the northern or southern extension?
Northern.
Northern. Cost is a huge factor there, and the amount of match. Yeah. I mean, none of that funding's been identified yet. But it's huge.
Well, I get that, and we've already within the city taken some, under some other means to do that. So that's why I'm kind of thinking there's a little bit of leverage there.
That has a potential in the future. CDOT staff will be looking at the cost estimate of the Powers extension this year, because at the moment I don't even know how much money to ask for the Powers extension. It's somewhere between 79 million and 220 million, but that seems like a wide. So we're trying to close in on what that amount is. The other thing is, if we give it a little time, we are collecting money through a URA that could then be used for a local match. So there is that local match potential coming up in the future there.
That is why I mentioned that.
Yeah.
Yes. But, well, maybe we need to start putting it on, at least on the long-range radar.
It's right there. Trust me. I won't forget it.
Let's go to Councilmember Knight and then back to Wayne Williams.
So just, I guess, Kathleen, if she's still there.
She has your back. That's your 6 o'clock.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Tiger grant submission package for the extra for Powers is already in there, right? That's all been done, or is that something?
No, we have not prepared any Tiger grant submission. We have in the past, and I'm going to probably forget some of these, but we have submitted for the northern extension of Powers. We have submitted for, or at least wrote up a submission for the Stewart interchange, for Colorado Avenue and No Man's Land, for the Fillmore interchange. Well, back in that day, back when it was written, it was still No Man's Land. So the Fillmore interchange, and I probably am forgetting a couple, but those are the big ones that we've submitted.
Right.
And it wasn't, the success rate of Colorado as a state in getting Tiger grants has been quite low as well.
Okay. So, even though our advisors tell us that the chances are low, I mean, Fillmore has always been a top priority with this body. And the 1.3 million that is coming out of PPRTA funds, but is actually coming out of the city's portion of it, we're going to have to delay something else to do that. And so, if we as a state are having hard problems with it, hard time getting the money, I'd still like to ask the question, because if you don't ask the question, the answer is going to be no. But if you ask the question, who knows? Maybe you do get those double sixes at one time.
Councilman Knight, I hope that the interchange at Fillmore will be under construction before we even hear on what's happening with the Tiger grants. That's the kind of scheduling we're looking at here. And we really are not, we're down to hundreds of thousands of dollars in difference on Fillmore. We'll come up with it. I promise. Okay. And basically what we're doing there is we have, at PPRTA, there are projects that we have not spent all of our money on, that we had excess money, leftover money, the projects came in cheaper. We're bundling all that money and moving it to Fillmore, and that will cover a majority of the 1.3 million. Then the fact that PPRTA is coming to the end and revenues have been up, there are some increased revenues that we can pull from that we were not planning on going to another project with anyway.
Commissioner Gruen.
I don't want to get people nervous over Fillmore, but that's been approved by the commission under the assumption that there's $12 million to get this done. And if we start revisiting this whole issue, Tom, I don't know how you view this. I think there's a significant chance that all of that money gets pulled back and reallocated to another project, because one of the things about one of the thresholds that's been going on in RAMP is that every municipality or governmental entity has to certify that the funds are available to provide their contribution. And this was one of the issues with I-25 and Cimarron, is we weren't quite there yet, and we gave an extension. So what I'm hearing the discussion now, that we want to try to figure out how to mix and match money to get to this 12 million threshold is of a concern to me, because I think it could put us in jeopardy. I'd like us to feel comfortable where we are with the discussions that have taken place between CDOT staff and the city staff, and put this one to bed, and think about other endeavors. That would be my preference, because I think it can just get trickier if we don't do that.
That was the direction I saw this heading, so I think we hear you.
Yeah.
Clerk Recorder Williams?
So,
Here's the napkin.
no. Here's my opinion, and well, actually, now that Daryl's leaving, I might actually have a vote. Because I'm like fifth on the list for the county. Here's what I think. First, I totally agree with Commissioner Gruen. There's absolutely no way we should put Fillmore as a Tiger grant. At best, it delays it by a year. And I'm not sure it meets the threshold, because the threshold is 10 million. And we're talking a couple million to get ironed out here. So we should not be doing that. I don't think we ought to do the Powers one, frankly, for the expansion by Peterson, for two reasons. Number one, it delays it, and number two, while we have a decent chance of being submitted by the state, it won't get selected by the feds. And Kathleen's analysis is right. So they have replaced congressional earmarks with bureaucrat earmarks, which I'm not sure how that's a better system, but it's the system we have. At least with congressional ones, if you didn't like what your congressman did, you could vote him out. You can't do anything with the bureaucrats. Having said that, the issue, if we don't have the Powers extension ready and we don't have the funding for the match identified yet, I think we ought to look towards that for a future Tiger grant. My analysis is none of the projects that have been mentioned have any chance at all of being selected by the feds, but I don't want to not submit something because then they can say, well, you didn't submit something. And so I think we ought to start with a Gate 19 project and do that one as a rural project with the county fronting that, working with Fountain. So we have a project from this area, but I don't think either of the two projects we've submitted before, and it was the full Stewart interchange. And that was one of the three that Colorado submitted. But the timing's not right for Fillmore anymore, and the timing's not right for the Peterson project for the Powers project by Peterson. Let's deal with those. We've already got funding that we can get there, and let's instead at least show our community support for Gate 19. We can put that in. It was submitted as a project. If by some miracle it's selected, wonderful, great, because there was no funding source for it otherwise. But that's my push. I will represent what this body wants at the STAC meeting on Friday as your representative. But I will tell you, we have had one of the two or three projects submitted by CDOT every year. And if we don't have a great CDOT project this time, it might be appropriate to instead not push to have ours be one of the two or three submitted, so that it doesn't look like we're always trying to grab it, particularly if there's not a very good chance or a very good project. That's my response.
Commissioner Clark?
Okay, so I'm going to partially agree with Wayne. I agree with Wayne with regard to the Fort Carson improvements. I think that the county should submit something separately, and I've heard from our transportation commissioner he would support that and write a letter. I wholeheartedly. However, I'm a little puzzled by, I realize that maybe the funding timeline's not what we would want. Let's assume that we get the money from the Tiger grant on the Peterson project. It seems to me having at least something is better than having nothing, and I don't know that there's a plan that funding's just going to drop out of the sky somewhere to fund that project elsewhere. So I don't know why, if you don't buy the lottery ticket, which I'm not a lottery player, but I certainly spend those Conservation Trust Fund dollars in the COCO funds. But I will say that if you don't buy the ticket, you can't win the lottery. And I don't think there's anything wrong with submitting an application and seeing what happens. If we get it and we don't need it, we don't have to take it. But if we don't put it in, and our transportation commissioner is saying go, and our transportation folks from state are saying this looks like a viable project, I think two good projects that could be submitted separately, obviously from this board, one to the county, one to the city, both integrated to the support for our military, that sends a pretty good message too. So I don't have any control over what the mayor decides and what city council or the city does with their project. We can't force them into submitting it. But I think if we miss this, we're missing an important opportunity. From the county side, I have a little more input into that one, and I do think we should get that rolling along. So that's my thought on the matter. I will be very frustrated if somehow we don't put the Peterson project into the potential Tiger.
Commissioner Gruen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I need to run because of another appointment, but I pretty much echo Commissioner Clark's concern. If someone could call me after the vote takes place to get me up to speed on what the board decides, that would be helpful to me. We do lose something, I guess, on the Peterson Field application or Pete access, and that would be the time that it takes to put together the grant. But even if we're unsuccessful, and I don't disagree with Kathleen and Wayne that there are a lot of political considerations involved, and we haven't been successful in the past, but there's some, I think there's some pretty attractive features to this particular application that didn't exist in some of these other applications that we might be able to capitalize on. So if we're unsuccessful, I don't know that an application that's pending is mutually exclusive of us receiving other funding possibilities for that particular road, which is what I thought I heard suggested. So again, I agree with Commissioner Clark that I think it's something that would make sense doing, and it's something that I feel not only this application on Powers Boulevard, but also the Gate 19 are both applications that I feel I could strongly support as your commissioner.
Thank you. I am more than happy to move ahead with both. This is not listed as an item to vote on, but yet we are supposed to prioritize. However, both hinge on a willing partner, so
Dennis.
PPACG board will not have the final say.
Suggestion for the board?
Rob?
Suggestion for the board, maybe your action today is offer a letter of support and any data we have for those two applications, because you can offer that up.
Okay.
And that you don't prioritize these, but if the local government submit, we can offer a letter of support that we can pen and get to the board for approval.
I move for a letter of support based on what Rob just said. Yeah.
Second. Councilmember Miller?
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to clarify, because my understanding from Tom was that this had very little chance. He wasn't encouraging that, because he said it had very little chance when you look at it competing with a 470 project that has a $20 million match for $220 million. I thought the advice was to the contrary to what you suggested from Tom, and maybe Tom could clarify that.
Tom, could you clarify? I thought you were talking about the Fillmore project when you said that. Yeah. Or are you speaking of projects in general?
And then I guess just to piggyback or to refute a little bit here, I think there is some potential for getting Powers moving before we wait for the results of the Tiger Grant. And to the extent that doing that would delay this vital project, I'm going to defer to our transportation manager on that. So,
Councilman, I don't think it hurts us to move forward through the CDOT project or process with the Powers project, if that's what this group, if this board would like to happen, and make a case for it. And I mean, there's nothing to lose, because the outcome will be there'll be 3 projects that will be selected to move forward that were CDOT submitted projects. And if you don't make the cut, you can always apply for it as a local project. So if I say Wayne Williams would be a great spokesman at STAC. I think he understands all the issues and could explain the merits of the project. And even though it's not on the list, he could make the case as 11th hour submittal. We realize that Cimarron, we've heard that it's not going to fare well for these reasons. We'd like to
And
substitute.
Again, you meant Fillmore?
I'm sorry. I keep saying Cimarron. It's on the mind. Fillmore, yeah. So I guess I'm not encouraging or discouraging, trying to get on the CDOT list. But I'll have to say that I do have my doubts that it's going to be competitive, on the CDOT list, even if it's successful being one of the top 3.
We have a motion. Any further discussion?
Rob, would you restate my motion for me?
For Jacqueline.
I'm at least willing to admit it, okay?
Yeah.
It has to do with a letter of support,
Yeah, I think
basically, based on what the local governments decide. correct?
If the city submits their project,
We're in the county.
we will, or the city of Colorado Springs submits the Powers widening by Peterson, that we will send a letter of support. If the county or Fountain submit Gate 19, we will submit a letter of support. That's the motion. I seconded.
Now that that's been clarified,
Thank you.
any further discussion? Councilmember Knight.
Do we have a quorum where we can even take this vote?
We do.
No, we do? Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on.
I guess I have to raise the question, though. Do we have direction for Friday's STAC meeting, and whether or not you'd like to pursue the project through CDOT channels first?
I would encourage.
Mountain says yes.
I would encourage our local governments to get with the transportation folks before the STAC meeting, so they're not advocating for something or not advocating for something they should be.
So let me ask specifically then, seeing 3 city council members here, is there a way to know whether the city is going to be promoting that project or not?
I was actually looking towards Kathleen when I was speaking, thinking that, different chain of command, thinking that she between now and Friday could run that up the flagpole. And
I will, and I will,
Thank you.
any other discussion on the stack?
On the STAC items, there's under legislative update, there's one interesting point. CDOT has been told they're likely to get $1 billion in strategic corridor money, and it says the memo says the starting point for the conversation is the current list of 5 uncompleted strategic corridors. However, if the Transportation Commission chooses, the list can be adjusted to address additional different projects or priorities entirely. So that's an interesting, just slid in there in the middle of the memo.
Yeah, and let me talk about this. There are obviously several extraordinarily expensive capital projects that are part of the strategic projects. The I-70 West corridor is over $1 billion allocated in the strategic projects, so it could use up all of that. The viaduct, replacing the viaduct in that middle, is
Over $1
another
billion.
huge sinkhole, perhaps literally, of money as they lower it. So where we are, and let me just talk about this briefly, because this is real dollars. the I-25 project, with the completion of Cimarron and Fillmore, has the critical areas done. There is a refunding of Berta's advancing of the Baptist Road interchange that is identified and as a promise, and CDOT has talked about repaying that from these 228 funds. But other than that, I'm not aware of any critical project on the I-25 corridor. And so now you're talking the Powers Boulevard corridor being our other strategic project that has how much?
About $160 million.
Yeah, $160 million left in commitment, but arguably, if they're going to expand it, we could claim other parts of this. But on a practical level, we need to be talking about, as a board, where those priorities are on the Powers corridor with that $160 million. The total environmental clearance is $1 billion?
Over about $1.5 billion.
Yeah, $1.5 billion. So the things that have been mentioned, first, this little widening project, second, the extension going northward, and then you've got the area around Carefree that hits level service DF fairly soon if we don't address it. So those are some things that we need to be looking at, but obviously the Powers corridor is critical. And we haven't gotten to those priorities because our priorities have listed things like Cimarron and widening I-25 and Fillmore, all of which are getting done now. And so we have to talk about what is that next. And we have a promise from REF-A with respect to Powers Boulevard. We also have other projects in our community, 24 West being one, that aren't part of that. That's okay. We can leave that for a while. Promise. So that's there are a few other things on this, but going long term, that's one of the issues. There is a formula programs discussion at 11 o'clock on the agenda, which deals with how you allocate dollars. There is a shift being talked about from pure miles things, which only affect those who have a state highway system, to using population as a factor, which ultimately is something that may help the Pikes Peak area, which is disadvantaged in terms of miles per citizen. So there's some other things that are important on that agenda. But long term, this board needs to be talking about, and I think we ought to add an agenda item, if we haven't done that formally. What is our priority for that $160 million that we are entitled to, and where are we going to target? And that's and where do we need to be telling Tom this needs to be gotten ready? If indeed the significant money does come through under 228.
Okay. Anything else on STAC?
The only interesting thing to me is the CEO Advisory Committee. Apparently, they're going to form a new committee to advise the CEO at CDOT, and literally the first I heard of it was to see it on the agenda. So I have no idea what that is. There's no attached information. I don't know if it's in addition to the STAC or the other advisory committees, but that's all. So.
Yeah, I'm interested in hear about that one. Colorado State Legislative Update.
Legislative tracker is going around. This is an information item only. I will stay around here afterwards to answer any questions if you want to talk policy.
Anything critical that's crashing down on us?
Nothing critical.
Okay. Item number 8 would be our member entity announcements.
Even though there's hardly anyone left, Rob had asked Tyler and I to just give a brief about some of the things that Impact Group has been working on. And I'll start, and then Tyler can fill in, too. The list of things that obviously were presented to our board last time around include military, include cyber We've been working on the flood insurance issue. The Biggert Waters Act successfully basically put a time clock stop on the increase in flood insurance, would have made it really impossible for people to keep their flood insurance many times. So it hit the House. The House made some changes. It's gone back to the Senate. It looks like it's going to pass, and actually the House version is better and more sound than what was passed in the Senate. So I think that we have a good chance of moving that forward. Transportation, obviously MAP 21 is a big concern for all of us with regard to reauthorization of MAP 21, which expires in September. Actually, National Association of Counties held a press conference on the Hill, and good attendance. Representative Tom Petrie was there, and he's the chairman of the House, I think it's Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. So he spoke and in favor of it, and we think we have good support on both the House and Senate side. No one really knows what that's going to come out looking like, but that is something in addition that the impact group is keeping track of, as well as the talks about the military impacts of reductions. And certainly Andy Merritt has been very engaged in that from the Regional Business Alliance. Tyler, was there anything you wanted to fill in on that one?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay.
Wayne?
My clerk and recorder hat on for member entities. We have had a presentation of the Board of County Commissioners with respect to the plans for the 2014 primary and general elections. We are working with a number of the jurisdictions here with respect to 24-hour drop-off sites, as well as voter service and polling centers. Craig's going to send that off to the board. I sent the presentation to him to forward to the board. I have maps of voter service and polling centers for the primary, the general, and the two phases of the general election and the mail ballot drop-off. So if anybody wants to see those, see me afterwards.
I wanted to say I think you got some pretty good press on that, Wayne, too, that what a great job you were doing here. So,
thanks. Councilmember Knight.
Yeah, back up to my computer finally came up. Back up to the legislative tracker. I'd like to ask that we add on there House Bill 1160, which was being proposed by Colorado Springs Utilities. This would allow our wastewater vacuum trucks to exceed the state weight limit that's on the roads. And otherwise, we'd have to run more trucks and run the risk of getting contamination when there's wastewater leaks or whatever. So it's put in by CSU. It sailed through State Transportation Committee pretty quickly. It's now at the Appropriations Committee. And since it'll help us keep wastewater out of Fountain Creek and everything else, if we can drive on the roads with heavier trucks, I think this is something the board ought to also look at.
Okay, got it. Andy?
Since you brought up the legislative tracker, I don't know about anybody else's eyes, but there's no way I can tell the difference between a pose and monitor on the shading. So just a suggestion, you put a symbol in the column or something that differentiates that. I don't think you want to publish this in colors, but do something simple like that.
Works. Anything else? You have the meeting schedule? We are adjourned. Finally. Yeah, what's a
Longer one?
yeah.
Starting to think I was over at council or something.
Yep.
Just in case they got into the weeds about it. Yeah.
Oh.
Where? You'll hear about it.
I can stick around for
I
lunch.
assume you were talking about homework that you guys were doing. I don't know. It's something that affects you.
Absolutely.
I'll let you know. But
Well, I think the level of money they're talking about, we'll find in the budget somewhere,
and
Yeah,
for that amount of money, it's not going to fall.
It's not going to fall.
Right. But Don is right. Okay, so we moved 700,000 of RTA and 600 of something else. That money could have done something. Else. So yes.
Yeah, where did that come out of?
Yeah. And even if it wasn't programmed, it could have done something else. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's always a, down at the bottom level.
Yep.
Who lost? Underperformed.
Put like all the cars on the roundabout, and I said, well, there's only one thing wrong. By all means. You haven't been driving out the first round, you know, you don't have. Isn't that the truth, though? Yeah. Where you're towards the scene, I was kind of sitting there looking at it like,
Well, I'm not, I still don't understand.
we don't necessarily have to.
Thanks for hanging out with us. It really was. It was, yeah. Okay.